Okay, we're back, and as you can see,
we're
we
live
have a
again.
guest tonight.
Well, now I'm gonna see. Now that you're using it, now I've got to update the bumper with the Geek Story and channel.
Good. I think that's good. It needs to be longer. That's what I always say.
Is that the most recent one? Is that the right?
That's the most
one?
recent one.
Okay, all right. Because that was the most current one I could find. Because I grabbed it today. That's why I asked for it.
I do it now. Hold on, Panda. I do have a short version of that.
No, I say go longer, and I think it needs like an end credit sequence. Like as soon as the bumper is done, then you see credits roll. Like, I would really enjoy
Where
it.
everybody you thank and everybody you
right
exactly
produced by Mike Mullis, directed by Mike Mullis.
Yeah, it just has to keep being your name over and over and over again.
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
I approve.
And the following people can stuff it, and then like a long list.
Right. Oh, that's a long list of people. That might be like an hour video.
We already have a good crowd tonight. We got about 6 people hanging out here. Quartz, James, Quartz, James.
Yep, I'm getting the chat up.
Oh, it's like a tongue twister for me. Is in Scepter's in the house here tonight. Eugene's here as well. Ruby popped in to say hello. How you doing, Ruby? I love the new thumbnail, by the way. That's great. So we got a couple people lurking here tonight, I think, as well.
That Ruby person throws me because I actually I knew someone named Ruby, and she looks identical like that Ruby. So I don't know if, I don't know if that's the Ruby. I don't think it's the Ruby I know.
I don't know.
But looks identical. Hey, if you ever lived in San Francisco and you knew me,
sorry.
I don't think it's her. Yeah.
Are we preemptively apologizing for him knowing somebody? Okay, so we are going to go around the room and kind of see how everybody's been doing. We're going to try to keep this a little bit brief upon request because last time it took way too long. And we have a topic we think everybody's probably going to engage in pretty well tonight. So we'll go ahead and start with Rob. Rob, share whatever you feel like you want to share. And then we talked about some stuff backstage that you may or may not want to talk about publicly. I will continue to say hi to people as you kind of fill people in on what you've been doing and what you got going on.
Yeah, we'll keep that rash conversation just between you and I. Sorry, I swear to God, I was fine. My image, my photo, my video and stuff was fine. It was perfectly in sync. And then these two come in,
like
and the video starts
seconds behind.
Flagging again.
He is a good 10 seconds behind.
Yeah,
he really is behind.
So we'll see. So I'm doing my little puppet show right now.
Yeah,
enjoy that.
Well, it's nice to meet you anyway, Ruby. This other Ruby. Sorry, Rob. Continue.
That's all. I didn't do anything exciting. I'm working on a video. The video I'm working on, I've been working on, which hopefully should come out soon. And
hopefully it has the same production value.
I hope it does. I really, if it's sequenced half as well as I am right now, I think we're all in for a real treat. Let me tell you.
One day he's just gonna lean into it. He's gonna have the white hair with the beard that he can just sweep to the side, and everything's gonna be delayed, and it's gonna be glorious.
Yeah. What's weird is that this little out of sync thing has just been for the past somewhat recent. We've had a solid year and a half, perfectly fine. No issues and that kind of stuff, and now it's this. I don't know.
And it's strange. StreamYard doesn't do sharing, right? It's not sharing the load between all of us, and yet when most came on,
it's a central server.
Right.
Yeah. I know I've had issues working with it in the past. That's kind of why I moved to a new browser. I've been using Opera GX lately as a browser, and overall, it's just worked better for me, performance-wise. Chrome has gotten more and more bulky and kind of been a bit
Chrome
of a
is
problem.
horrible now.
Yeah, so I just started moving everything over to Opera, and everything's been much smoother.
Yeah, I'm not using the GX. I'm just using the straight Opera, and it is such a nicer.
Yeah, I saw the GX
flatter.
one kind of targeting at gamers with a bunch of features, and I'm like, cool. I'll grab this one and try it, and I really enjoyed it.
Kathleen is using Prodigy over here.
That's correct.
Sears Prodigy.
Well, real quick,
Go.
I am working on a video. It happens to be pretty collection centric. So I was actually glad this topic came up because I didn't have time to talk about everything I want to talk about in the video. So I'm going to do it here. And right now, while you guys are sharing your thing, I'm going to bail out. And hopefully when I come back, the video will be a little better.
Okay.
He doesn't want to
And
hear
Carla
it
is in the house. Carla!
What's up, Carla?
It's good to see you, Carla.
Oh,
Hey,
thank
so
God
new
he's
em-
gone.
Woo, the show can continue now.
Dude,
No.
don't let him back on.
So, Kathleen Kennedy, what have you been doing?
Ruining
Aside from
everything.
Star Wars.
Ruining
Star
everything.
Wars.
Not much. I actually just put out Panda Sub 2000 just put out a channel update.
Saw that.
Hopefully you saw it. It's just showing you what I've got planned for the year, and we'll talk more about that, I guess, towards the end. But anyway, happy to be here. I believe have you discussed what the topic is, because this is an exciting topic for me.
Yeah, this one's probably going to be me leaning on you guys quite a bit, because I don't do a lot of physical collecting, so a lot of my complaints are going to be pretty basic, as far as like how difficult the entry level is now and how expensive it is.
Now
So
it
it's
is, yeah.
even besides of a space problem, right? Which I already have between, like, figures and statues and other things like that. Space is kind of at a premium. I've even slowed down a lot of that collecting just because of space reasons, right? The just physical room in my house, which is not a small house, but
Right.
it's
Flexing.
Well, I mean, it's
Not a
it's
small
not like a huge
Like our
mansion or
games
anything, but-
typically are on the 8th floor of the house, but we're trying to expand to a 9th
Right.
floor.
I
Right.
am
We're having it
actually
built.
trying to reorganize the floor up here, but we'll talk about that in a little bit.
Your butler can get to it.
Yeah, of course.
Right.
Be Ready is in the house. Justy popped in. Stampede popped in. Waves and Games was here. I think I missed him.
They're here. He's
Showing
here.
up in here. There he is. There we go. Show up and MrMatthews leaves.
No, we booted him off.
We got a good crowd coming in tonight. I think we hit on a topic that people are really interested into. Mike, what have you got?
Oh Lord. I got started to play Immortals Rising. Immortals
Are we
Phoenix
talking about
Rising.
games we're playing? Ah, darn it.
I've got to
or
start that.
whatever
I've
we're
been
doing.
trying to make it through High on Life. I
How
both
far-
love in that game. I both love that game, and that game annoys the hell out of me all at the same time.
I'm sorry, Mike. Didn't mean to interrupt. Sorry about that.
No, that's okay. High on Life is it's an inacquired taste. How far are you?
I got Creature and finished the something Brothers or whatnot. That whole
Oh God,
that whole stage was annoying because
that was
like
those
like 4 boss fights. I'm like,
and then
okay,
culminated into one giant boss
yeah,
fight at
it was
the
like
end.
3 boss fights and then 1 super boss fight at the end, and I'm like, okay, this just proves you have no idea how to pace this game. Like, you're so lost in how to pace this game.
It slows down. Don't worry. I didn't enjoy that boss, but the rest of the game is fine. So, but
Rob, they're
Creature
talking about
back-
High on Life again. You can go back to sleep.
Okay. Of course they are. Everyone's talking about High on Life.
I don't know, dude. And like I said, I kind of have a love-hate relationship with that game. There's a lot of things like the game mechanics and the weapons and all that stuff. I think there's a lot of cool creativity. There's a lot of cool stage design going on. But the dialogue, oh, holy hell.
Well,
God.
I hear it's a love or hate with the dialogue. I think.
Yeah, the
it
dialogue.
is totally love or hate.
Too much dialogue, dude. Like, I swear to God, they must have paid like 20 people to do 4 hours of voice work.
He got his
4
hours
hours of voice
hot
work
friends.
apiece. And I mean, like, solid 4
His hot
hours of
friends.
voice
I
audio.
sound like such a loser.
It's
His
ridiculous.
hot friends.
Listen, Boomer.
It's reefer cigarette stick.
They smoking the pot. The marijuana.
Marijuana. Oh, there's Invader. Born's in here.
Great show. Great show last night, Invader. Great show. Great
That was
TXR
a
last
cool
night,
icon.
brother.
So we do have a good topic for you guys tonight, so I don't
We do.
delay too long, and Rob can get some stuff off his chest. We're going to talk about retro collecting woes, how difficult it is to kind of start into it, things you don't really just kind of wish were different about it as a whole, and if we would go into more things about it that we actually do like, or things that we might want to collect that are kind of hard to collect that we wish weren't such a pain in the butt to get our hands on. That's all kind of up for grabs too. So tonight's kind of just about the core focus of retro gaming and collecting. So I'm going to let Rob start because he apparently has a lot of stuff to get off his chest. Take it away.
I don't really have a lot to get up. I'm just, for being a retro focused show, we haven't really talked too much about collecting on the the show. I know I'm a collector. Mike is a collector also.
Well,
and I've also
used to be a collector.
Yeah, you don't really consider yourself talk about yourself like a collector anymore.
Not anymore.
You have a collection.
I have a collection, and I'm paying homage to a true super collector and Papa Pete.
Do you know how much Papa Pete has?
Not overall, but I'll tell you this. I know he has very close to the entire Xbox collection. The entire.
So he's probably like 5,000-6,000?
And he gets a lot of the of off title stuff, especially for like the original Intellivision and the Atari 2600. He's got stuff I don't think many people even know exists.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's really gotten heavy into the homebrew scene, particularly on the Intellivision, because there's been a lot of action going on there. And honestly, across the board, there's a lot of homebrew and stuff like that coming on. Hey, Oh My Gaming popped in. Thanks for popping in, man. I appreciate it. It's good to see you, man. I got pop in more of your stuff lately. I've been bad about kind of popping in streams lately as a whole, actually.
You should probably just terminate your channel.
Don't.
Probably.
Pace does bring up a good point, though. I didn't realize how much of a collector Panda is.
I am.
Yeah.
He doesn't talk about that on his, and I've only gotten it through like little hints that he's dropped here and there unintentionally because he doesn't seem to want to talk about it. So it's like,
I want to hear about it.
Well, I'm coming out of the closet tonight.
All right,
my gaming closet.
And I'm also glad Eugene is in the chat because he and I also had never really talked about our collections, but I know he's a collector too. I kind of feel like if he sticks around, he and I might have the same take on it. But I don't want to.
Well, I also don't want to give the impression that I don't collect at all. I do.
Mike, you should probably cancel your channel.
Yeah. But I don't collect.
We're all canceling our channel tonight.
That's right. Except me. The guy that doesn't release a single video.
So, and to give you an example, in the last month I did get 3 import Saturn, 1 US Saturn, 1 Sega CD that various friends of mine, found for me at shows. I got friends that go to the shows and they take pictures of stuff and say, Mike, are you interested in anything? And then they'll send it to me and I'll pay them for it. But the problem is, we'll get into the problem with that. I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
No, I
just wanted to clarify. I just wanted to clarify.
I know you and I have differing opinions on the state of collecting.
Hey, Mazin.
At least I've gathered that you and I have differing opinions.
It maybe not different opinions, but different approaches to it.
Mm-hmm. Opinions of what? What opinion would there be of collecting?
What? Okay, I guess I will lead it off.
Go ahead.
So, I haven't really noticed it so much lately. However, there was a lot of resentment and animosity and just hurt butts over the fact that not too long ago, collecting became a lot harder because everyone was doing it and a lot of people were doing it for their own collections. But I think people were mainly upset about the people that are just doing it for reselling because it became the next hot thing to buy. You don't have to know or like video games at all other than they're valuable or they can be valuable.
Right.
So, people were trying to sell, Mario Duck Hunt for uber rare with the @ sign instead of the mint copy, $35. I don't know how much
it's like
now.
It was like that TMNT copy that I saw floating around. It was $3,300.
The sealed one, I think I heard vague rumblings about that.
Like, I am not that kind of collector. I'm not someone who cares about the variant where there's like a stained cover art or whatever. Like, I just want the old game. You know, like I don't.
Yeah, I would just want a copy of the game.
Right.
And for me, a lot of times emulation is fine. Now, I understand there's a purist aspect to that, where people want to play it on the original hardware, and I understand a lot of these games, including like some of the ones that I struggle with the most, are the ones that really do probably benefit the most from the original hardware, and that's stuff like Ninja Gaiden and Mike Tyson's Punch-Out. Like the timing, you can tell the timing is different from like if I'm playing it on like my Pi 4, I can tell a major difference between that and say my Steam Deck, and imagine I would tell a difference between my Steam Deck and the original hardware as well on how it performs. And I mean, my reaction time is my reaction time. There's going to be certain things I'm going to struggle with regardless, but there's setting yourself on the difficulty curve and then making it that much harder by adding in even more delay on certain things because the game wasn't really intended for the type of controls or layout that you're using it in, right? Mm-hmm. And having on the original hardware fixes that because that's what it was built for, right?
Mm-hmm. Right. And I think my problem is that, and I'm trying to remember, what's the name of the company that appraises stuffed baseball card? Wada, thank you. People are getting these things Wada appraised so that they can value them so freaking high that, you know, they make it impossible for somebody who wants to buy a game to play the game to actually go buy it. And I should have grabbed it before we started, but you know me, I can't not have a RetroRoots where I don't get up out of my chair to go get something off my shelf.
It's required now. At
it's
this
required.
Point. If you didn't, we'd be
hot flex.
I want to show you guys something when somebody else talks. My issue is that the market has become way too expensive for people who want to buy the games, to play the games, to buy the games.
Well, and now is totally the worst possible time to be collecting. I mean, like, as someone who's been collecting forever, I actually knew when to go for the Wii U, and I knew that the Wii U was pretty much going to be the last console to collect for, pretty much of the mainstream. Like, that's pretty much it. So when I went into the Wii U market, they were cheap. You could go to GameStop, get like buy 2 get 3 free, and now everything is obvious. As everyone knows, the prices are so absurd. Right now is not the time to be going into the market.
Yeah, and if I was going to collect for anything right now, it probably would be the Wii U.
And even that's
starting to get expensive. The GameCube would be one of the ones I think I would enjoy collecting for the most. Because even though I owned one, I skipped a ton of games on that. Like, I totally just didn't even bother to dip into Mario Kart Double Dash, and the more I see gameplay of that, the more I'm like, you moron, why didn't you buy that? That looks amazing.
Why didn't you cancel your channel? Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah, right. Well, yeah, that too. But, you know, that's a given. But there's a bunch of stuff like that I just slept on that I really shouldn't have.
You guys were crapping on the GameCube the other day. You were saying it was like a kid's lunchbox.
Well, it looks like a kid's lunchbox, but
I loved that system, man. Mm-hmm. From day one.
I love my GameCube.
Yeah, now it is.
Who are these guys you're talking about?
No, I've had my GameCube original.
I got one when Metroid Prime released, man. I got the Metroid Prime bundle. Yeah, it wasn't the first console I bought that generation, but I had one, and I probably had like 15, 20 games for it.
That's one of the best consoles. Like, very, very underrated.
It is very underrated.
Console. It's a super underrated console, and more people realized it because not enough people bought it when it came out.
There
were multiple reasons for that impression, and they're all valid reasons for the impression they had at the time. But if you really looked at it closely, it was a stellar console.
Yeah, it was. And I mean, I think all of my consoles are originals except for my Xbox, because my original Xbox's hard drive died, and then I bought another one for like $35 at Too Many Games. Or not Too Many Games, whatever that Coleco Expo nonsense I went to. And I wanted to show you guys this. So this, a buddy of mine got, and I streamed it on Thursday. This is Decathlete's Winter Heat version, right? So this is the sequel, I guess. Winter Heat, right? It is import. It was $25, and buddy got it for me. The US version of this exact same game, the North American version, is $150. That's insane. There's no reason for that. None whatsoever. So I'm fine buying imports. And I'll tell you what, I am now getting a lot more open to, I know a lot of my friends are starting to look at reproductions. And I was very much not a reproduction guy at first, but it's gotten so unfair for people. It's a good thing that I still have the collection I have. I got rid of games that I should never have gotten rid of. Had I if I knew then what I know now, I would still have a copy of Power Slave, because now it's going to cost me $300 to get that game back. I'm sitting on games that thankfully are my originals that I'm never going to get rid of, because number one, I don't want to sell them, because I don't want to get into that. I don't want to feed into that market. But at the same time, I can't afford to buy the games back that I want to play. Power Slave is one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, and even John saying like he does a lot of emulation, a lot of like just burning of games, because he just wants to play the games, right? So he's just reproing a lot of those, so he can like play them, right? I mean, for me, it would just be being able to play it on the hardware, right? I'm not looking to make a fortune off a collection. I'm just looking to be able to play the game. Right, that's where my headspace is, and apparently there's a good version of Power Slave on Steam that's apparently a remaster, and even Paste is saying the Steam version's pretty good.
Well, real quick, I want to try and get back on track with the woes of collecting. I'll tell you, any collector in the world will know the pain. Like it's stupid, but it's like everything. The most annoying thing about collecting are the effing stickers that they glue onto the boxes. I am now a pro at removing them. I know like the right, whether I use, Goo Gone, or I use, hydrogen peroxide for something, or alcohol. Like there's a million different things that you can use depending on the thing. But it's amazing that with such valuable pieces of gaming history that they still use this like what do you call the most powerful glue in the world? Yeah, exactly.
Oh yeah.
And sometimes
it's also fun when they actually open it up and they actually put it on the insert itself.
That's what I was gonna say.
Oh, and it's worse when it's on the disc. I've got stuff. I've got stuff where it's.
I was about to say, Blockbuster used to put them directly on the cart too, on the label on the cart.
Yeah. Actually, I have a game on my couch I was kind of playing with. One of my Super Nintendo games. They would actually sometimes just brand Blockbuster Video into the plastic. Like they actually had something they melted it into.
That's terrible.
Fortunately, on the back of the box, the cartridge, but
the only stuff I collect now are liquor bottles to drink.
What's up, Sandwich? And I just Mike. Why did that do that? It's 1M in Sandwich.
And just a really, and then I because I don't know what the top. You know what? I'm going to go on a tangent. But
no, the topic was the woes of collecting. I find the price, the block. I feel like we're getting boxed out because of pricing. That to me is a definite woe of collecting.
Well, if you were collecting pre the pandemic, one thing, at least in the collectors circles that I was always in, was that we all knew that it was gonna either burst or boom soon. That was right about a year before the pandemic, and that's when I was really grabbing an enormous amount of stuff, and thank God that I did. Like I'd say my entire Wii U collection, which I'm only about, I think, 6 away from a full set. I think at most I spent $150 to $200 for all of it, right? Like everything. And I also knew that the newer systems down the generation were also going to be big. Xbox was really starting to heat up. GameCube was already starting to get out of control. And N64, I'd say N64 is still decent to collect for now, even though you're paying more than you should for a lot of that stuff. But basically the way it works is you just have to think about how old the kids were when they had that console and now that they're adults with spending money. And that's when you know when those games are going to go up in price.
Yeah, like DS and 3DS, if they haven't already, they're due to start shooting up there.
Yep.
Game Boy Advance started shooting up there.
Yep.
That one was affordable for a while. Game Boy's been kind of bad for a while.
You talking about the original Game Boy?
Yeah.
Xbox is still highly collectible, by the way, though. I mean,
sure.
There's no... Like, I don't have anything in my collection, just looking at it. I don't have anything over $40 in my collection.
I think a lot of people are sleeping on the original Xbox for some reason as far as collecting, and I don't know why. That generation, the very first Xbox, they were really kind of swinging for the fences with IPs and stuff. So they had a lot of really good stuff land on there.
They do, but the games, because Microsoft put those out, the games are still really abundant. It is not hard to find Xbox. That's just it. The Saturn games are extremely hard to find. Xbox games you can find anywhere.
Well, and Mike, the problem too it's not only about finding them, it's about people not even letting go of them. So that's the thing too. People love their Saturn, so they're really holding on to those games.
Some of them are, but what's happening is you can go to a convention, and the people in the convention, the people that are
a lot of this question.
Running those.
Yeah, I was going to leave that up for a bit. That's a good question.
The people that are running their booths at these they know what eBay is people on eBay are selling these games for, so they're jacking the price up to match that. Nobody even that there aren't people out there that are selling games for the love of gaming. They want that money. What's the most you're willing to spend on one game?
Mm-hmm.
Well, how about you guys could probably just say what's one of the most expensive games you ever bought?
It would have been recently. So it's I did most of my collecting. I don't really know if I really consider myself much of a collector anymore. I just have a collection. I do actively go out and look and stuff. I don't really buy a whole lot of stuff anymore. So because I buy so little, I'm much more willing to spend a larger chunk of money on a single game than I would have been 10 years ago. 10 years ago, if it was over $10, that's like a no-go for me for most games. Nowadays, I'll often only buy maybe 1 or 2 retro games a year, so I don't mind. Well, I do mind. I'm more willing to drop $70, $100 on one game.
Now, these games, can I just ask a quick question? Are these games that you've been looking to play? It's not just to have, right? You're looking to actually
I actually want Eugene can somewhat attest to this. I don't really want games in my collection anymore that I know I'll never play. So I'm not. Right. I'm trying not to be just a
hoarder of sorts.
I hesitate to use the word collectard, but I mean I was buying and keeping games and any kind of gaming paraphernalia for any reason. If I went out and I would go out game hunting multiple times a week, sometimes every day, and anything video game related I found, I would buy. I don't care what system it was for, I would buy it. So I just have boxes and boxes and stacks of stuff that I got for dirt cheap, and I only bought it because it was there. So I'm been systematically kind of trying to purge that stuff out. So the games that I'm buying now are games that I actually want. Like I spent $70, not very happily, on Return the Joker for the NES, just because I want to play that game. And it's unfortunately a game that I recognize is not really probably going to come down in price anytime soon anyway. So, and then my most recent purchase was Ghosts and Goblins on the, Ghouls and Ghosts on the Sega Genesis for $100, which was a gift card for my wife. So it was still my money that I paid for the game. But I would say, to answer Scepter's question, $70 might be my top. It really depends on the game. Like if someone
You've
offered
already said
me
100.
I know, but that was a little different because I was like, my wife had already bought me $100 card. That game happened to be $100.
Most of that was
if someone offered me like Panic Restaurant or Hagane for $150, I'd be stupid not to take it. What's up, CM Retro? Also, what's up, Scramble?
Hey, CM Retro.
Hey, CM.
Yeah, I'm trying to keep some of these questions and comments up as we get to them, as we answer some of these questions. So if I'm not getting to you in the chat, I apologize. I'm trying to keep things to where to the discussion points and then catch up with you guys coming in as we can. So it may just be like a wave and a high for a little bit as we kind of get through some of these, because some of these are chunky questions that we're answering. I think for me, it probably.
I encountered the same thing, Eugene. By the way, many times. That's why I stopped buying DS games off of eBay. It was too risky.
Yeah, I didn't even know that they were counterfeiting them, but there's counterfeit everything.
Oh, and eBaying, that's cheating, dude. In my circle, that's cheating, dude. You got to do it physically, man. You got to go out and get it.
Oh, yeah, that's why I got a lot of my stuff, was just actually going out there, because you don't really necessarily get the best deals on eBay unless you kind of work a little bit. I would buy literally just boxes and boxes where someone's just selling like 50 games. I want one game out of that box, so I buy the whole box for whatever. I keep the one game and I just send the rest right back on eBay. So that's kind of how I think that's how kind of a common trend for.
I think that's a lot of people, or they'll find something in GameStop that's cheaper than what it would normally go for on eBay or somewhere else, and they'll buy like all of them, and then they'll sell them, and they'll use that money to buy the games.
That's actually how I started getting into collecting. Was that I actually started out as a reseller, because this was like a new idea to me. It was like this was when my first son was born, and I did the thing that most fathers do. I started panicking about money, so I was like, well, what could I sell to get some money so I could start paying for this kid? And it was like some old Game Boy games, Game Boy Advance games, actually. That was which happened to be the last generation of that time. So I sold some of those on eBay, and I was kind of surprised at how much they went for. So I was like, well, I think I found my thing. So I just started actually just going around town and buying. And this was when you could actually buy, 3 NES games for $5 from Hollywood Video, because they were purging out the stock. So and then I had to play all these games to test them. I had to play all these games to test them, and I started getting kind of, hey, I don't want to sell this game. It's good. So I started keeping more stuff than I was selling until I eventually just became just a total collector and stopped reselling.
Yeah, so I think we've gotten your answer on like how much you would spend, Panda.
Well, we have Matthew saying roughly 70. What was your answer?
Mine was roughly right around 100.
100?
I think that's the most I'd be willing to spend on, especially stuff like NES era and around that time, because those were like $40 to $50 retail. That's basically double the asking price of them. I feel like that's reasonable enough. I might go a little bit higher with N64 because a lot of those were $80 to start.
Nowadays, but back then, when I was getting them, there was nothing.
Yeah.
And Mike, what was your number?
I was trying to consider, because I wanted to use Power Slave as my, if somebody came to me and said, Mike, I can get you Power Slave for $200, I would think about it. I think it's got to depend. I think it depends on the game.
If you're collecting for the Saturn, your benchmark might be a little higher than if you're collecting for like Xbox.
Yeah,
and I think it varies a little bit like that. I think it almost has to, right? Because you have to look at the retail cost of the cart or the disc when it came out, and how difficult the system is to collect for, and whether or not you really, really, really want. I
typically would stay within the $100 range, but again, if somebody came to me with a game that I so very much wanted, and Power Slave is a game that I don't just want to own, I want to play. Knowing what it's, I could tell you quickly what the going price of it is right now.
Oh, so Carla's a DLC collector.
Yeah, DLC is another thing. I can see that. I mean, and
Carla does also have like a lot of different.
That could be a whole other discussion.
Yeah,
honestly, from like DLC for.
Well, that's a whole different discussion.
Yeah.
So complete in box, roughly Power Slave is roughly about a $250 game complete in box. That's if somebody doesn't try to gouge you for it.
Okay, quick question there, Mike. And I'm going to let you finish, but have this question in the back of your mind when you do it. So I would love to ask everyone also, because this will tell us what kind of collector you are. So I guess this question's for everybody, and then Mike, please continue. Now the question is, if you could get the same game, however, so there's the closed-in-box version. Let's say that's $200 or $300, but you could get just the disc or just the cartridge without the sleeve, the box, etc. For $60. I'd like to know what kind of collector are you? Do you need that box? Anyway, Mike, continue, but just have that in the back.
So that's a great no, and I think that goes into my question, my answer. If someone had a full set and said $200, I would take it. If somebody said, I only have the disc, but I give it to you for $70, I would take it. Because somewhere along the line, I could find a manual. And then I could print a box back. I don't have to have... I can buy replacement Saturn cases on Amazon for $50. And I could, for a pack of 10... and I could slap that into a thing. I mean, because I'll tell you what I've been doing with... So you guys have seen on my channel for a long time, I was subscribed to both Retro Game Treasure, and then I was subscribed to Video Games Monthly. And some of that stuff only came with a disc. And so I bought some jewel cases and some DVD cases, and I'd go print out the case and slap the disc in there and throw it on the shelf. I'm okay with that. So if somebody came to me with that particular game and said, for $70, man, I've got the disc, I'd snap it up. Heartbeat.
See, I would want some form of at least El Cheapo jewel case. Like the inexpensive ones that you get for burn CDs or something like that. Something to take the disc and protect it. Right.
Oh, I'm sure that they would. I don't think they would put it in a. They wouldn't put it in a cardboard sleeve. Yeah, you gotta put it in a cardboard
box or Ziploc bag for me. And be like, here you go, or hand it to me.
No.
Me try to get that home. No. You spend the freaking 10 cents or whatnot on a case or something like that for me if you're going to charge me $70 for it, and put it in that. I don't care what kind of case it is. I'll figure out the rest later, but that's fine. Particularly in NES, just a cart is fine. I can go get sleeves and stuff like that for NES cases and bottom plastic cover pieces for the SNES and stuff like that. And those take that kind of abuse better. I would want something protecting the CD, at least as I traveled at home, to get it someplace more secure, right? It's the same way I limit on a lot of my music CDs having those flip cases, those case logic cases where you'd slide them in and out. Mm-hmm. That does so much damage to the CD over time that none of us realized when we were originally using them. But over the years, you're like, oh, God, no.
I did too, but by the time I realized it was too late, I was like, oh, I'm not going to change now. So.
Oh, no, I was anal about that
saying complete box for a CD game, but cart games, they're fine with just having the cart.
And like I said, I think I could find a manual elsewhere.
Depends on what it is. And sometimes just getting the manual alone sometimes can be more expensive, believe it or not, than if you got the whole.
Hey, Elvis, good to see you, man.
Elvis, I want to key in on this comment too, because this is a problem. This is a huge, and this goes back to what I was saying about people at conventions, but the local stores, they're just as bad, if not worse. And when you and I met at Crayola, when we were in Pennsylvania, mm-hmm. across the street from Crayola was that game shop. And I don't know if you went in it. I
didn't know it was there. Nobody told me it was there. Everybody just darted off.
I went in there.
Me and Rab were sitting there filming stuff the whole time going, where the fuck did everybody go?
So I went in there and they had a couple Dreamcast games that I would like to have. And I think one of them was Midtown Madness something or other. Metro it was the first Bizarre Creations game. It was pre Project Gotham. And the guy wanted $50 for it. Now, I'm armed with my Game Eye app.
Oh, I thought you were going to say a gun. I was like, well, this is getting dark.
Got it for half price, guys.
I said, I looked it
You
up.
still got chipped at half price.
Yeah, that's right. I looked it up, and the game was worth about $25. And I'm like, I showed the guy, and then I showed him on eBay where that's where they're selling it for. He's like, well, you know, he was giving me some BS story about why he had to charge me, you know, an extra $25 more for the game. And I walked out not buying anything from him because that is also a huge problem. Sell me the game for what it's worth, and that does not help the cause right now.
I can say something real quick about that, and I should probably answer the question as well. First off, little tip for new collectors out there, and this is going to address that little store thing you just talked about, Mike. One of the things that I would do,
Metropolis Street Racer. Sorry, Metropolis Street Racer. That was the name of the game.
It was right on the tip of my tongue. What I would do is I would visit local, fairly local game stores all the time. And I would make myself known. If I knew I was going to buy 10 games, I wouldn't buy them all at once. I would buy them, every 2 or 3 days. I'd keep coming in so they knew who I was, and I became friends with them. The more friends you become with them, the more deals you're going to get. And I would also sometimes do favors for them. So for me, I was like, oh, I can give you like a commercial, a YouTube commercial for your store, blah, 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 blah. And you're no longer getting the prices, Mike, that you were talking about. You're getting a very, very different price, and they'll also hold things for you, and they'll look for things for you. So that's really good. Is get to know your local game stores and become as friendly as you possibly can. Go in there as much as you possibly can too, not just once every month. Kind of just shoot the crap with them every once in a while. And you'll get really good, typically, unless they're bad, they're crappy. You'll get pretty good deals. Mike, a lot of times they have to increase the price a little bit just because they also have a store to run. And depending on
get that. But
I'm not saying that some of them aren't jerks. I'm just saying sometimes they have to go a little bit higher because they also have to make profit off of it. You know what I mean?
I have a few comments on stuff like that, but also related to this, have you ever seen a Blockbuster employee shuffle through a stack of Bear CDs like a deck of cards? And this is one of the reasons I stopped going into GameStop, because they would do the same thing. They would open every single copy and put them in a little sleeve, and then they're flipping through all of them in the back. And I'm like, why are you opening my game?
Oh, yeah, that's not a new game. It's opened. I mean, I'd have this argument with them constantly. Real quick, I do need to answer this question. I have to because I never answered how much would I pay for a game. And then I just have to do that because I think someone wanted to know. Depending on where Panda is financially, back in the day, Panda was doing pretty well. So I would say anywhere between $600 to $1,000 typically for a game I really wanted. I would spend more for systems though. Typically, like Vectrex, the Power Glove, Virtual Boy. These are things that I would pay whatever I needed to pay to get those things because systems I love. The Jaguar was the one where I said, no way, this is too high for me for what the Jaguar is. That's the only thing I've ever turned down. But I'd say typically $500 for a game that I really, really want is probably my max. And I don't care if it's closed in box or anything like that. Like that is not important to me. I just want the game itself as close to complete as possible. The booklet is more important to me than the case itself. I just wanted to answer that question, so it's all done now. Back to now GameStop. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was gonna answer that question from my side. I wasn't the only one that didn't answer that. So, but if you
did answer, you said $70. You said $70.
No, we're talking about the loose complete in box.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
If it was originally available in a plastic case, I will not buy it loose. So there's been a couple Genesis. Well, let me answer his question first. So I have some loose Genesis games. I think this is going to answer your question, Nick.
Okay.
they don't count in my collection until I actually have it complete. So I actually have like maybe half a dozen Genesis games that I just have put in another part of the house that basically like a holding place until I actually have the game complete. So I held on to Batman, the video game, and Revenge of Shinobi loose, not really considering them part of my collection. And then once I actually got a case, I actually ended up finding complete in box cases for both. Then they got moved out and considered, and then I actually added them into my collection database. So if it's Genesis, don't even come at me with a loose Genesis game. I will buy it for pennies. I will not buy it for half of what it's worth. So my game for that's, I guess, probably comparable to yours would be Misadventures of Tron Bonne. I had that game when I was a kid. One of my favorite PlayStation games. I sold it to EB Games for $8 or something, and now it's worth, I don't know, $500-$600. If someone offered me $70 for a loose Tron Bonne disc, I would flat out tell them no. I would. So that's
Matthews. Can I interrupt for one quick
you may
second? Okay,
allowed.
So if you were a kid, when you were a kid, if your best friend handed you we'll just say Shinobi, whatever, a game, you would not, as a kid, consider owning Shinobi because it didn't come in a box. So that would not count as you having Shinobi back then.
Well, this is me talking like now as an adult with my own collection.
This is my point, though. So you changed as an adult.
I would have thought it weird that you were handing me a loose Genesis game because I was like, well, it came. I understand a loose NES cart because we just threw those cardboard boxes away. The Genesis games, except for those shitty cardstock boxes they eventually start coming out with, they all came with a very nice, attractive, very stackable and
I was going to ask about the card back,
plastic clamshell case. Why on earth are you throwing that out?
So as your friend is trying to hand you a game, you're like, why on earth are you handing me this without the box?
Remember that I'm also the kid that when I saw the condition of my friends' action figures, like their G.I. Joes and their TMNT, and they would take them outside and play with them like in the sandbox and stuff, and the grit would get in their little joints and they would start losing the belts and stuff. That appalled me. My toys were kept in immaculate condition also. So I didn't even know that loose Genesis carts existed probably back in the day.
How dare they play with toys?
You play with the toys in the house on the carpet.
You know what? Honestly, I didn't get that way with toys until I got like the real Ghostbusters figures and the Silverhawks figures, because those were so nicely painted and nicely done that that was the first time I remember as a kid being very concerned about them outside of letting other people play with, like, because I had one kid who broke one of my Transformers because he just kept twisting it the wrong way and broke it at the waist. And I never hung out with him again. I'm like, you're just going to
Did you burn his house down?
No, it was an apartment. I would have burnt down the apartment complex. Might have been totally justifiable, but I didn't do it.
Everyone's going down with him.
But, for the most part, if somebody was playing with him on a little bit rough, that was no big deal. Earlier on, as I got a little older and the quality of the figures started kind of getting better. Not that the earlier Transformers and stuff I had weren't, but they just kind of got better as far as like how accurate and detailed they were. I got a lot more, I guess, aware of the condition of like my toys and wanted to keep them in a specific condition, right? Not in the box. I still wanted to play with them, but there's playing with them, and then there's like throwing them against the wall or banging them into each other, and
or your friend who just randomly just keeps twisting them and then surprises.
Right, he just like starts to twist it so hard that he breaks it at the waist. Like, what's the point in that? If it doesn't move that way, don't turn it that way.
Did he like eat paint chips? Was he a little?
I don't know. It was it was weird. Sucks too because it was my Mirage figure. I recall that very vividly. I'm like, you took my Formula One racer and broke it, you bastard. Yes, Mike has a pool table in the background.
It's true.
But yeah, I mean, with me, Genesis games, it always made sense to keep them in the case. Like, if you had them out and you're playing them, fine. But the case was a nice hard plastic case. It came with a little
Genesis
thing, so you
cases
could put the manual in there, so you could keep the manual nice. The cart snapped into place. It was just a really nice container for everything. Like,
why would you lose that?
Why did you leave it out from there? Like,
I completely agree. I was actually so anal that when my friends knew that if you borrowed a game from me and you returned it back and I opened the jewel case and the CD wasn't completely straight, that you could never borrow it ever again. Like that was my rule. So I totally get it. I was just curious in Matthew's case if he had changed from a kid. You know, were you the same person as a kid?
I think so. Honestly, clearly with my Ninja Turtles trauma that I went through by seeing what my friends did, I haven't really changed a whole lot.
The trauma, it still keeps you up at night.
And Eugene brings up a good point also, especially with like it shocks me that people are losing the cases for their DS and the 3DS and their Switches and stuff, and they're like, where did that go? That's a whole lot harder to lose than the little tiny little stamp-sized game.
See, the Switch, I understand putting it in some place and then not looking at it again because I have an individual case that I keep my Switch games in because it's more convenient to open that up than it is to open up each of the individual boxes. But I store the boxes in a closet. So if I want to put them back in there, I can put them back in there.
I have noticed a trend that if in my 90s kids, the kids who were into like Madden were always the kids that lost the boxes because it was always just it was always just a stack of games on the TV, and there was no boxes and there was like soda stains next to it and all that other stuff. So that's usually the type.
Here's my issue with the boxes. So, and I brought a couple of examples back over. One set of examples I know because Genovi's in the room.
Flex time.
Yes, it's flex time.
We're flexing again. Here we go.
We're gonna flex.
We're gonna flex all night. Plus, Cousin Born.
No, it is not.
Plus because Cousin Born is here. So, Sega did some weird crap with their boxes. So let's go Sega CD for a second, right? Sonic CD, very nice. We were just talking about these cases in the chat, right? But not all Sega CDs had this. Some Sega CDs had this nonsense, this cardboard bullshit that then this makes me mad because it's horrible. And then they did this. All right, so 32X, right? Here's my wonderful Afterburner 32X. It's got the nice Genesis style case. It's got the really nice,
Yes, but that wasn't typical.
I know, because you ready for this?
NBA Jam was also like that. There's the flex.
There's the flex.
Wow, Mike.
But
I'll give you $70 for it.
Why does it say repro?
I'll give you $5.
That, but that's the thing is that this, which is, and I don't they didn't know this at the time, but now this is the most expensive game in the entire library, and I have to literally hold it like a baby, so I do not see. I knew Genovi would like to see that, but it makes no sense that they moved away from these. Makes no sense that they moved away from these. And the funny part is, Chuck Rock was no different in price than Sonic CD, which had a better, nicer case on it.
That was just them improving the profit margins later on. They did it with the Genesis. They did it with the 32X. They did it with the Sega CD. They start off with these really nice cases that everybody loves because that's how Sega did things from the Genesis line on. And then eventually, over time, they just got cheaper and cheaper with their manufacturing costs. And that's where they could cut costs, right? It was cheaper to do cardboard than it was to do plastic. I
got a question, guys. Maybe at least one of you can answer this. Maybe someone in the chat. So I actually have a couple PlayStation 1 long boxes. So I know that I think Warhawk was like a launch-ish game, right? So this is one of the first PlayStation games I ever played. So this yeah, I'm holding a Warhawk. Okay. So this comes in like the exact same CD jewel case that the Saturn comes in. So I'm pretty sure this is a launch game, right? So this would have been one of the games that was launched with the. So then we also have Twisted Metal. This actually came in a plastic clamshell case, which, as you can see, that they did a really good job gluing the label around.
They fall.
So I'm kind of curious, where did these plastic ones come from? Because it wasn't Twisted Metal kind of an early game too, I thought.
Yep.
And then they went to the standard CD size. So what was the? I'm kind of curious what the transition was. I get this. This was kind of almost industry standard. I don't remember too much.
I don't remember PlayStation really having a standard, but I'm no historian.
I don't remember the big cases.
No, because
I do also have
really done a lot of digging
eventually
into
they went to
cases
jewel
over the
case.
years.
I have a cardboard case for a Battle Arena Toshinden also, I think, where it was more like a DVD, like the old shitty cardboard DVD case.
Language, Matthews. Language.
Sorry, kids. Sorry.
Sorry, children.
See, Elvis actually seems to like the soft boxes better. The color shines more on the Gen and the
on the Genesis.
Are you talking Genesis, Elvis? Are you talking like 32X? What are you talking about?
I think it's about Genesis.
I do not like the soft cases.
I mean, no, me.
By the way, hi, Zombie.
What's up, Zombie?
And then they went to jewel cases, and then that's where the Dreamcast went to jewel case, and then Xbox placed PS2. Those all started going DVD case.
Yeah, I was reading his comment here. The plastic ones are from the. What's the other? Is the other PSX? Is that?
I would say it's the
one?
box version, because if Rob, to answer your question, I'm pretty confident that, which means not confident, that PlayStation originally launched, I thought, with the cardboard version. Like I thought those were
standard. Like almost like a 32X size or the 3DO size ones were like really tall. As I recall.
Yep, that's what I thought they were. And I think the jewel cases were just here and there. It was never a standard. I remember it being, because PlayStation originally went more with like remember how CDs used to come in those long boxes? Like I'm talking music CDs. How they would come in those ridiculous boxes.
I used to actually, and you guys may hate me for this, but I used to.
We hate you for
this up and I'd get the CD out. I'd keep the jewel case, obviously, but I would cut the front off of that case and then I'd hang it up like a little mini poster.
Oh, okay.
I hate
because I thought they were cool looking.
Yeah. I vaguely remember those long boxes.
I was actually sad when they stopped going with those, because those were fun to like pin up on the wall, and I just thought they looked cool, and it made the CD pop more. When they went to just the jewel cases, it actually got a little bit harder to find things, but they could store more in the store, and it cost them less than packaging. So I mean, it made sense from a financial standpoint, but from like a consumer standpoint, it was a bummer.
So, Elvis was saying that he prefers the
card.
Yeah, he likes it on the Genesis and the 32X both. And I can see, because holding up
as long as they're good condition.
So again,
so
this is the difference.
Yeah,
he's talking about the cardboard. You got to put them in that plastic case thing, though.
This is the cardboard.
I mean, the color on that Spider-Man is amazing.
It is, but you got to remember.
That's great.
All right, but you have to remember.
It's just not going to have the durability of Afterburner.
Right, but hang on. So part of that is, if I just slide the sleeve out just a little bit, the insert is made of that same cardboard.
Yeah, the insert has the same color. It's just it looks duller because of the plastic that's over.
Exactly. If you take it out, you can see the line where I've taken it out, and you can see that it is much nicer looking than when it's in here. But to your point, the manual, the cardboard is all going to be better protected.
But here's my question for everybody, because like to me, this is getting down to like what collecting has turned into. Like when you were a kid, how much did you guys care? Well, I think Matthews has sort of already answered this, but how much did you care about when you were looking for a game and your parents were, let's say, buying it for you? How much did you care about the aesthetics of the box condition, the type of cardboard versus the jewel case? Like, did any of that matter to you? Or as we got into adulthood and we've become more and more boring, that we now focus so much on the aesthetics, the ones and zeros of something, instead of what it's really supposed to be as a game? Was that when you guys were kids as well? Or is that you found that later on as a collector?
I think with the Genesis, it mattered to me more. With the NES and Super Nintendo, it didn't matter So long as I had something to store the game in that would cover the connectors, that seemed like a minimum. Like, why are you throwing the plastic piece that you put on the bottom of your SNES game away? Like, it's there for a reason. Use it.
I'm telling you, it's all those Madden people. I'm telling you.
I always thought that was there. And CD games, I hate doing CD games used. Mostly because I'll pick up the disc, look at the bottom of the disc, and it looks like somebody fucking ran over it with a damn lawnmower.
Language, Nick, language.
The case would just, it'd be scuffed and beat the crap. It might have stains on it or stuff. And I'm just like, if this is how you treat your stuff, I don't want your stuff. Because I don't trust.
Oh, these are people who don't clean their balls. Like, it.
I don't trust anything from anything that's in that condition because I don't trust that the game's going to work, right? To me, it's just an indicator of whether or not the game's going to even work or not, right? Like, I understand more with like stuff like Madden that people might not keep those in the best condition because it's kind of like Call of Duty in a lot of ways where you always buy the current one and you're not really playing the old one, but you might have nostalgia for the old one, but you're not really playing it anymore because nobody's running it anymore, right? It's not like picking up, like, say, Super Metroid or, Crazy Taxi or Power Stone or something like that, where you're just going to sit down and play it on your own years and years later. The Madden games weren't really designed for that. The roster's always changing and stuff. Sports games in general, I find, aren't really made for that, right? So I understand a little bit less care on those than I do other titles, though some of those are worth a lot of money still.
Well, yeah, I mean, and there was always those buttheads. I'm using safe language. Buttheads who would even like write their name on the games. Like, what are you doing, dude? Like, why? Yeah. Why are you?
I don't understand that either.
Why are you doing that?
Well, I guess that was probably back when it was more common just to trade borrows, what we called it when I was a kid. Games on the schoolyard with your friends. To answer your question though. It never occurred to me as a kid to have used games. I think if I had known that there was a used video game market, I probably would have taken advantage of it. So it was a kind of a moot point because I always received games in brand new sealed condition. The only games that I was really fastidious, I can't even spit that word out. The only games I was particular about, fastidious is the word I was trying to get out.
Big word.
Was the Game Boy. Because that, I think it was probably because the little plastic insert tray that it had, that was enough to get me to keep that entire box. And I was very particular about the condition. My Game Boy collection was also immaculate. I didn't like the cardboard box get all wrinkled up. I didn't like it when the plastic tray was getting crinkled up for me reaching in to pull out the tray. And yet I only kept the games in those boxes in the plastic trays. But as far as like the NES goes, I probably lost that box and maybe even the manual as soon as I opened it up.
Yeah, but when the company itself shows no care for the product as far as the presentation, like Nintendo, then it's easy to discard that thing because it was never care put into the beginning.
It was
like a Genesis.
Go back to this.
Right.
This thing, and let me. So, to me, it's not about whether or not I'm a collector now versus if I had seen this when I was a kid. Obviously, this is in my collection, but put up next to, because I have everything on a shelf, put these up next to each other. This looks like crap in my collection.
And as a kid, did you care as a kid?
If I'd seen that masked box on the shelf, and even today or even as a kid, I don't think I would have bought it. Because, I mean, it looks like it's been stepped on and run over. Like, what condition is it going to be? And if they're not going to let you open it up and take a look at it to see if it looks like it's okay, why are you buying it? Matter of fact, I bought one thing because I needed it for a specific project from a store, and the box was beat all to crap. And that store had a history of game theft. And I asked them, I said, can I open this up and see if this is in here? And they kind of went over to the side and they started chuckling. And I bought it, and I said, okay, I'm going to buy this. I said, I'm going to open this up right outside. I said, if this isn't in here, I'm coming right the hell back in here. Luckily, the disc was in there and it was in good shape, but I never went in that store or bought anything from there ever again. I'm like, one, you have a history of theft. Two, you're going to laugh at me when I question whether or not you actually have the game in the box when it looks like it's been stepped on and run over. Are you kidding me right now? You shouldn't even put stuff in that condition on the shelf, in my opinion. It's not a good image for your store. It's not a good image for the product.
Was this a used game you're buying or a new one?
Oh, this was new. This was new. This was
Wow.
a piece of software I bought for like Star Trek because I was trying to make some animated GIFs at the time. And this had images of like all the current ships and you could turn them and take snapshots and stuff. And so I was doing some work on a webpage. And so I wanted it for the information on the ships and for the images alone. And it was the only place I could find the software. I just happened to find it there. And I'm like, well, I kind of really want this. It's not that expensive, but I'm going to be like, it was only like $20, but I was going to be lit if it wasn't there. I was already kind of pissed that they were kind of laughing at me. And I'm like, me and you are done doing business. I could have come in there and spent hundreds of dollars a month or so because I had nothing but spare, money and gas money then. So I was still a kid. So all my money went for like fun stuff. I'm like, I could have dropped all kinds of money in here, but I never went in there again. They went out of business.
Did you set fire to their? Oh, you just said it went out of business.
No, they went out of business.
Yeah.
Best Buy.
To the place,
It was Media Play.
Notice
Best Buy came in and Media Play went.
Kind of weird.
And I couldn't have been happier that Media Play went under. It was like, screw you guys.
F those guys.
I still
Were
have
you particular about that kind of stuff as a kid, though? I mean, you asked.
Oh yeah. Oh no. Absolutely. Well, yeah. I've always taken care of my stuff. I would happily offer. Exactly. And I like that even better out of context. He just randomly told me.
It just came so late in the conversation.
Yeah, I would offer anyone money. You could take anything off my shelf, open it up. Those CDs are pristine. There's not a single scratch on them. Everything is. I was like that as a kid as well. So I've always been like that. But
so you and I would have played along well as kids.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Like we could have easily. We would have trusted each other in swapping stuff. To play stuff like that would have been cake. But collecting. As I got older, I went in reverse. So like me, it was more about I want to get as many Genesis games as I can. And unfortunately, many of them don't come in boxes. I agree that that's stupid. But I've got like 600 or 700 Genesis games just in drawers without the boxes. Would I prefer the boxes? Absolutely. But I'm more happy to be able to, pick out the game and actually play it. To me, that's more important than the box and stuff like that. But I get people that want that. I've
honestly found it difficult in modern gaming with like physical games because there were times I'd buy a game from like Amazon and it would come on like one of those envelopes and the case would be broken or the disc would just be sliding around in the case when I got it. So I feel like the case quality's actually gone downhill as time has progressed, even in the plastic cases. Because sometimes you'll get them even at Target and you'll bring it home and you'll hear something rattling around and then you're like, what the hell's going on? And like one of the clips that's meant to hold the CD is broken.
Right.
So Genovi had a question here on when shopping for games in the 80s and 90s, RPGs would often be $50 to $100 more than others. This often impacted my purchasing choices. How did it impact yours? I was an RPG nut. So I was big into RPGs. From like right around the 16-bit era, I was huge into RPGs. Even in the Dreamcast era, I had quite a few of them. So I tended not to really pay as much attention to that and just got them because I really enjoyed that genre personally.
It's strange. I can't answer because I was born in the year 2000. I'm only 23 years old, so I'm going to have to leave this to the old folks in the
And he totally has a PS5.
For Eugene, actually, in the chat. How many complete Famicom games do you have? Or actually, it's not just for Eugene, but I just know that Eugene buys Famicom games. I like the complete in-box Famicom games. And fortunately, they're actually usually cheaper to get than complete in-box NES games. But they all come in different sizes. Like, there's not a uniform size I have probably about a dozen boxed Famicom games. Not a single common size between all of them, I think. So they're kind of awkward to display. They don't line up very easily on a shelf.
To real quick to answer Genovi's question, because Matthews tonight derailing constantly.
Oh my god,
he is kind of terrible at this tonight. Normally, he's trying to beat us back on the topic, and then
Nick doing a fantastic job keeping on topic. Matthew, wild swings. He's going to start talking about golf. Real quick, to answer Jeremy, actually, that doesn't apply to me because in the 80s or 90s, I didn't get to buy my own game. That was still my parents, for the most part, getting me stuff, and I wasn't really into RPGs. So I can just say that if my parents saw that typically the games, let's say, were $50, now there's a game here for 90 to 100, I don't think they would have bought that for me. So I guess that may not apply for me. I probably wouldn't have been able to get it. Mike, how about you? While you're like being courtroom stenographer, what are you typing?
I'm talking to people in chat.
He used to complain about my keyboard. Now he sounds like the machine gun.
I know. I'm sorry. Genovi and I are talking 32X.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're on a show. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah. It's not like you're on a panel or anything.
It's not like. So what was the question?
Well, it was Genovi's question. Believe it or not, that
yes, I know
yeah,
about the. So it did, and in fact, that's why RPGs weren't the only games like that. Too, don't forget games like Virtua Racing on the Genesis, because it had the SVP chip. Star Fox. There were games that, more than just RPGs, that were way above.
Yeah, Star Fox I got, yeah.
Wasn't Star Fox 64, Donkey Kong Country 64 a little higher because of the expansion pack and the Rumble pack, respectively?
Yeah, but I think Star Fox SNES was like an $80 game or something crazy like that.
That had the NFX chip or something.
It had that chip. And Virtua Racing Genesis. Right, Genesis Virtua Racing was also in that range because it had that SVP chip. So it absolutely
$80 at launch on the SNES.
Yeah, it absolutely did. I didn't typically go like the games that I bought that were RPGs stayed in the realm of normal pricing. So like the Landstalkers, the Buck Rogers. There was a Star Trek 25th anniversary RPG out there. Those are the games I stayed with. I didn't. The Fantasy Stars. I didn't go for the super huge games.
All right, go back to your novel, your novella.
Oh my God!
Chapter 2. Jeez.
Now, I have a question for you now, Panda. So, you said you would. Your top shelf games you're willing to pay a lot of money for. Generally, do you spend as little money as possible on stuff?
Oh yeah.
I'm incredibly cheap. Like I'm not even ashamed of it.
That's smart, man. There's nothing wrong with that. Smart.
I don't like to spend. It's a little different now, but I was used to spending single digits on everything. So.
I would be willing. For me, I'm willing to go high so long as it's fair. I think right now the market currently, it's not fair. It's so loaded that where before I said I'd be willing to spend $500 to $1,000. Not nowadays, because $500 or $1,000 is like for Mario 64. I'm kidding a little bit, but you're not getting what you could have got back in the day. So no, typically. I was kind of doing sort of what you did, like I said, with most of the Wii U stuff. That was me going to GameStops, like everywhere I could, and getting, buy two get three free or whatever the hell those deals.
Yeah, their flash sales are awesome.
Oh yeah, that's more my thing. I'm saying if it's a game I really really wanted, I'd be willing to spend that price point because I know two things. One, I really want it. And two, I also know that this thing is eventually going to go up even more. These games very rarely come down. I think, and I'm kind of nervous that with the marketplace now, I'm nervous that it may not come down much. And I think that's unfair to everyone because this is way too high.
So now I have a question. Now that I was thinking about it, like how much have the recent collections of a lot of these retro titles affected your willingness to buy the actual cart? Because now you have like multiple Konami collections of Castlevania games. You have like Capcom collections of like most of the old Mega Man games, a lot of the X games. There's like Contra collections, etc., and all that. Has that affected your enthusiasm for like having the originals, like stuff like the Cowabunga collection, where it seems to run and look just as good as it does looking on the original hardware?
Good night, Ruby.
My old friend.
Night, Ruby.
I want to know if that's her dancing in her videos.
For me, it would change nothing. For me, I prefer, like, I have every single game in the Cowabunga collection. You know, they're the original stuff. So for me, no, I prefer to have the originals. I like playing Contra on the Nintendo system that I had when I was a kid. I like that controller. I like playing it on a TV that it was designed for. Otherwise, I could just emulate. I mean, to me, there's no difference really between emulation and a collection at that point. But I think the average person, I think these collections are fantastic, especially with what the marketplace is. I say absolutely get the Cowabunga collection instead of getting these overpriced old games. So I have no problem with people that do that, but for me personally, I prefer to have the originals.
I was just curious because for me, like as somebody that does more emulation because I don't want to allocate the physical space to collecting,
sure.
Nor do I want to try to find a way to either modify these things to work on HDMI and try to find a working CRT and try to maintain a working CRT and that kind of stuff, which is pretty critical to a lot of those little games, right? Mm-hmm. Now, if I was going to start collecting, say, light gun games and stuff like that, I would want a CRT. Right?
Yeah, you need
stuff like a Hogan's Alley and Duck Hunt, because that's how those games work. They literally don't work on modern TVs. They can't work. Even with some of the Leica modifications and stuff that they've done for LCD TVs, I've heard mixed results. I still kind of want to build a cabinet around that for like arcade purposes to try it, but you know that's a topic for another show.
Well, Nick, that's a good question for you though. As someone who does emulation, how does the collections fit in for you?
Honestly, I'll buy some. I bought the Cowabunga collection, even though I can emulate those. I bought the Konami Game Boy Advance collection, and I emulate that one. And the reason I do is because playing it on my Steam Deck or trying to play it on PC, if it's in full screen mode, you can't exit the game. You have to force close it. Okay. There's no way to exit it on PC from Steam. It works fine if you have it on console, but if you have it on PC, which is where I picked it up initially, it doesn't exit out well. And a lot of times those collections are cool to have because of like various different art that they put in, or interviews, just the sheer presentation of it and the extras that they put in there. They're nice to have. So I think
and like the Cowabunga collection added like little cheats and stuff like that too, which was cool.
I think they added like Game Genie stuff or some things like that in there if you wanted. And for me, being able to get all those and have them in one place where I can just kind of go through and just have that kind of curated like that is kind of nice to have. So even though I can just download those and play those, sketchy gray area as far as legality, I'm not selling any of them. I'm just playing them for my own edification because I just want to play the games, right? I'm not trying to like make consoles and sell consoles out of this thing. I just want to play the game. I just want to experience the game. And for a lot of these, it works fine. Like Ninja Gaiden is sometimes a little spotty. Others, it's not. But I mean, even on the collections, you're going to run into the same thing. Though a lot of times I found on the collections, they're a little more optimized for modern controllers as far as like latency, like delays and stuff you might notice if you're emulating the original ROM versus doing it in a collection, because somebody's gone through and taken that into account, right? And made sure that it's going to play clean, right? So from that standpoint, if you want to play it on a modern system and you don't want to have to keep all these older systems hooked up to try to play that, I think it's a great option personally.
Absolutely. Your chapter 3 interruptions. You need a little break.
Oh. You know what? Why are you here?
My parents have even said the same thing to me.
I'm with Nick on this, and I'll take it a step further. If it's a game that I already own, I won't necessarily go and get a collection to have it to play it again. So like, or not a collection, but if it so there are games that came out like Nights into Dreams that came out on Xbox, PlayStation, but I have the Saturn version. I prefer the Saturn version because of the controller. The Xbox controller is not as intuitive for me because it's not set up the way the original Saturn controller was, and that game was built for that controller. Mm-hmm. But if there are games that are in a collection, like I bought that Contra collection, Nick. I've got the Castlevania collection. I got the Atari. I got the Atari 50th. Would I go and buy? I would rather at this point, Digital Eclipse go and add some new Jaguar games to the Atari 50th rather than me go out and buy a new Jaguar, which I should never have sold in the first place. This is why I hate the market the way it is now. You can't get a Jaguar for like under $700.
Yes.
So which is freaking ridiculous. So I would rather them add games so that I can play the games. It goes back to my original point as to why I'm not as big a collector as I used to be anymore, and why if I find if somebody comes to me with, hey, I can get you, I get you Winter Heat for the Saturn. And I go, well, it's import. I could just put my Saturn in import mode. Yeah, I'll buy it for $25. That's why I'll do that. And if there's a collection that'll give me those games, I'm not going to go out and try to find. I'll tell you what, if somebody ported Power Slave to the Xbox and PlayStation.
Love that Power Slave.
You're damn right I do. And if somebody ported it to the Xbox or PlayStation, I would buy it there and I would play it there and I would no longer need to go buy the game on the Saturn.
Well, see, and I think part of this has also led to like the new market coming, because a lot of people are talking about the Virtual Console and stuff like that, with like the various different collections, like the Genesis collection and the lag and stuff like that. But I'm sorry, Nintendo's making a lot of money off of selling those games as a service.
Yes, they are.
I agree.
Yes, they are. I still wonder why.
I was going to say real quick. What did you say, Mike?
Why do you hate me?
I don't hate you. I just can't wait to read your. Well, everyone hates me, but I can't wait to read your novel. I'm like, I can't. It seems like it's a gripping tale.
It's right there in the chat.
I hate you, Mike, just to make you feel better.
Okay,
he's gonna burn down your house. Watch out.
That's just another every other Monday night.
I'm gonna burn down your channel.
Oh no!
That's every other Monday night.
One thing that I'm curious if the people in the chat have this. I bet you someone in the chat can agree with this. One of the things I love about collecting is, I've said this on a couple of podcasts. I used to have a ton of parties where people, like 30 people, would come over, and I'd have all these game consoles up, and anyone could just play whatever they wanted. And everyone who would come over, they were blown away. Like they were like kids again, looking at this stuff that they had moved on with their lives because they're better people than me. They've got families, they're doctors, lawyers, valuable people in society. So they were looking at all this stuff and just taken back to kids. And they were looking at the box, like all that stuff. Like when they looked at those boxes and that joy they had is very similar to what I have when I'm looking at all this old stuff. So I'm curious if any of you guys here have ever had people over and looked at this stuff and it reminded you of how fun it is to collect. Like, because for me, those parties always reminded me of how much fun it is when they're looking at the Virtual Boy and they're going, oh my God, they're putting or they put the Power Glove on, or they're seeing the Vectrix, or they're, playing the old Nintendo games on the system. I'm curious if you've ever had that experience, because that to me is one of the major joys of collecting.
See, I haven't, but then I don't do a lot of collecting at that level. I mean, the oldest I have probably in my collection is like a couple original Xbox games. I've got a complete in-box version of The Legend of Zelda because a friend of mine gave it to me. Mm-hmm. I did him a favor and he wanted me to have it, and I thought he was crazy for giving it to me. And I was like, are you sure? But
that's a better friend to have than your Transformer breaking kid. That guy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I like having that stuff, but I don't have a good place to like display it either. It's just kind of like in a closet, right? So there's no real like joy to be had at looking at it there. It's not displayed in a nice way, right? And I feel like if you're going to do a collection, part of doing that collection, and this could be another like potential woe, is like, where do you put it, right? How do you display it? Because if you're going to have it, I mean, you're obviously going to want to flex it a little bit, and you're going to want them to be able to reach it easily, right? So you can play them when you want to play them. So I mean, how do you deal with the space requirement in the layout to be able to do that, right? Because you've got to have like, you either got to live alone or you got to have an understanding partner that's going to allow you to have all this stuff up and connected, right?
Mm-hmm. Anyone else there, or
Yeah.
Go ahead, Rob.
My collection is, or at least half of it, is pretty prominently displayed in the house. And yeah, we get the occasional. I would say probably about a third of the people that come over to our house are just like, "Whoa, my God, I remember this game." And there is that neat shared excitement. It's nice, especially when you have so few actual physical friends in your regular daily circle that you can, share this hobby with. To see someone get as excited about the stuff as you do is exciting. But I don't have like parties and stuff where people. I'm a little. I don't want to say stingy or selfish, but I don't like people messing with my stuff. So it's like
I knew that was the answer.
Don't touch.
Don't touch my stuff.
You can look.
Don't touch
Sure,
my
you can look at those games all you want. No, we're not gonna play. Are you fucking out of your mind? Get out of my house.
Language, Matthew.
Wow,
Sorry,
we're not
kids.
gonna
We're
play.
going hardcore with language tonight.
It's 9 o'clock
Wow.
at the earliest, kids. You should be in
We're
bed.
not going to play. You can look at it, but you suck it.
Yeah, but you can't play with
Look,
my
I don't know you. You one of my kids' friends? No. You're not gonna wait. There's been a few people that have come over that we played games together, but for the most part, everyone just gets excited to see them. They don't necessarily want to play them. I don't like multiplayer anyway, so it just it works out that no one even asks.
Right.
That is a hot take.
Oh no, he looks all in the garage. No,
That is a hot take.
Genevieve, the N64 is one of the ones that I really want to do
I
on
love
the
that
Switch, or at least get a hold of the controller for the Switch so I can use it as a USB controller. The problem that I have with the N64 is emulating it. It keeps wanting to map things to the right stick, and that drives me insane. I hate that. And that's where all the C buttons go. And I'm like, don't do that, because then I have to leave that to get to the A and B buttons that are still where they're supposed to be, and the layout's all wrong, and it just causes me no end of headache. So that's one of the consoles that
GameCube too, because it had a pressure sensitive button. I don't know how they emulated that.
That one emulates a little easier.
Okay.
It maps better, but the N64 one does not map well. Like everything else, I can kind of adjust to, right? I've gotten used to just using controllers like this to play almost anything. It's just what I'm comfortable with. It's what works for me, and I've just adapted to using it on whatever I'm playing. Yeah, it's weird at first, and if I was used to playing a lot of the original hardware, it bugged me too. But the N64 is the one that bugs me the most, and it's the one I kind of want, that kind of original controller, because that controller was so weird and unique. And to an extent, so was the GameCube, but the N64 one felt even more alien in its own way. That
was a weird controller.
In order to get the right experience out of it.
Well, I liked it.
No.
I like the N64 controller worked for me, but then I don't have monstrously large hands either. I know people that were like, bigger people that were trying to use that thing. Anytime they tried to use the center analog stick, which was like 85% of the games, like literally watching them try to hold it is like watching somebody trying to use a Joy-Con these days. Like, I can't imagine those people ever trying to use the Joy-Cons. I mean, they'd be like this, like one of those little mini micro arcades, that you can technically play, but it's like, 1/32 scale. So it technically works, but you never play it.
One of the best controllers that most people don't kind of really know about is the Virtual Boy. That controller was perfection.
Which controller?
I haven't played enough to actually agree with the perfection part, but I was surprised at how good the controller was. And there goes the screen again. By the way, I was thinking about it. I think present company, anyone here tonight or in the chat, if you come over to my house, we could play some games. It's all right. One at a
time. One time only.
But yeah, it actually was a surprisingly,
and you must actually bring quarters. You must bring quarters.
Yeah, no, my friends had free reign of the house. They could take off the shelf, put whatever. Well, all my friends are trusted them. Yeah, I trust all of them.
You vetted your friends and
I vetted, yes. I got DNA samples and I held their driver's licenses, correct.
The GameCube controller I think is probably one of Nintendo's best designed controllers.
Such a good controller.
Yeah, it's just really comfortable to hold. Everything's laid out in just the right spot. It looks weird until you start actually playing with it, and then it just all of a sudden clicks. And you're like,
how do they do that? How do they emulate the pressure-sensitive buttons?
I don't know, because I thought it was just the C button that would have been the weird one for that one, because you could do it.
No, they were pressure. Like when you would drive a car.
The buttons, you could make Mario walk or run, or actually no.
It was pressure sensitive, and then it could click, right? So it was it was like a gas pedal. How much you were pulling down was pressure sensitive.
I would imagine it would work the same way with like the
triggers.
The triggers, because the triggers are the same way. I mean, if you want to accelerate, depending on how much acceleration you want, depends on how far down you pull the trigger.
Oh, okay. I guess that makes sense.
I mean, it's the same concept, right?
Mm-hmm. Most likely. Except it did have that click. So I guess it would just be if you completely pull the trigger, then that would count as the click.
That would count basically as a click,
right.
Yeah.
I wish I tell you the one of the best consoles.
Yeah, that's what Tommy had said. Yeah.
One of the best consoles with one of the most frustrating controllers for me is the Dreamcast.
I just hate the damn wires placement.
I kind of got that, but I never fully understood that.
I didn't either. But the feel, like I always had to play with a Mad Catz controller because the original designed Sega controller was so oddly thin that it never felt comfortable. And I wanted it to.
I didn't have any problem with it. Hey Andrew, good to see you, man. I didn't have any problem with it originally. Now going back to it after so many different generations and revisions to the controller, both aesthetically and functionality wise, I would probably have the most trouble going back to something like the Dreamcast, because the Dreamcast, going back and playing a lot of those games, it screams second analog stick, which it never had. Which it was one of the last ones that I can remember that only had like one analog stick. There was the N64, and then there was that one, and then the PlayStation started out not having one, and then eventually they ended up going to the DualShock, where they had dual analog sticks.
Mm-hmm.
And then dual analog sticks just stayed the norm from then on. So a lot of the earlier games, like the N64 games, like as much as I loved Turok and thought it was a brilliant control scheme back in the day, I would much rather have that remapped with 2 analog sticks as opposed to playing and doing the movement, the looking around with the C buttons. It works
for heavy
but it's
wave.
Kind of annoying.
Heavy just asked me about the Mad Catz controller.
Okay.
I didn't have the neon green. I have the blue. But yeah, it's got the 3 buttons set up. It does.
I like the thumbstick, but I don't know if I'm feeling that D-pad.
It's got a much better D-pad. The D-pad is so much nicer, and it just fits better in my hands.
Yeah.
So
I always found the Dreamcast
I'm not really feeling the original D-pad on the Dreamcast controller.
It was that original. The Sega made controller was just thinner than this, and I never got comfortable with it.
Yeah, and Genovi's the same way with me. You can't find that N64 controller for the Switch in stock anywhere. Anytime it comes in stock, it disappears again, and I can't understand why they can't keep that thing manufactured. It's just one of those controllers I want to get my hands on, because there's a bunch of third-party ones, but they all look cheap and janky. The one from Nintendo is the one that actually, and honestly should, look the nicest. So it's kind of why I want one.
I always wondered about if Nintendo had come out originally with 2 of the analogs, what that would have done for game design, because I actually think it would have thrown it off its trajectory. I think that Miyamoto especially would be focusing more on like character control, like, like those arcade games where you move the character and then where the other one would control where it's shooting. Like where, you see what I'm saying? Like I wonder what that game evolution would have looked like if you started originally with the 2. I don't know if they would have thought of using it as a camera control. I think the evolution came the way it did because of it starting with 1. I don't know if I'm smoking the marijuana cigarette right now.
No, I get
you wanna.
I get where you're at.
Yeah.
Yo, and Andrew, thanks for popping in, man.
Have a good night, Andrew.
That's a long storyline in those emojis going on.
It was. There were a lot of emojis going on.
Epic. It was crying and the dogs came in and
I feel like you're right. I feel like the second analog stick was kind of a response to
the shortcomings of
3D games not really having enough control with the camera.
Right.
And so people wanted a way to control and be able to look and move around. And somebody just went, well, we've got one analog stick for movement. Why don't we just make another one and let people look around? And somebody went, oh my God.
Right. But if you started with that, I don't know if 3D games would have operated the same way. I think they would have been more, as I said, that second stick is more about where you're aiming as opposed to using it as a camera. I think the evolution worked out perfectly. I think it would have really confused things, but that's a totally
maybe I would have had one game I'd like to see.
I'm Matthewing right now. I'm derailing.
It's fine.
Well, I'm on that thought. I obviously it's just a purely hypothetical, but right out of the gate, Nintendo was trying to do like dual stick stuff with the C buttons on the N64 controller. Like the C buttons controlled the camera in Mario,
but they were automated.
So I feel
right.
Yeah, they had fixed positions that they would move to. They didn't allow you to just kind of move.
They had the groundwork. They were just they were more automated.
I just feel like they would eventually, because Nintendo has this thing where they have like a really good idea and they use it really innovatively, maybe once or twice, and then they just kind of fall back and just start doing generic stuff. So I feel like Miyamoto probably would have had 2 ideas, just like you're saying, where you're controlling maybe 2 characters at once. Or he would have. It probably would have been great, actually. If like I could almost picture like a Mario and Luigi game. Doesn't matter. But I think ultimately they would have just gone. It just makes more sense to use the second thumbstick for the camera. Why not? I feel like it would have just gone.
Honestly, now you got me wanting to see them make a Mario game where you're controlling both Mario and Luigi.
Well, see, there's a Famicom game. Actually, it was an arcade game. It was called
doing jump respectively. I think didn't somebody make a game with like
two things. So there's a game called Binary Land where you're controlling 2 penguins at the same time. But then also in a couple of the Mario and Luigi games, you were controlling Mario and Luigi simultaneously using 2 separate sets of buttons and stuff. So I think
Brothers did this expertly. Brothers was a Xbox game originally.
I think that's the one I'm thinking of. You had like 2 young brothers, and you controlled one with one analog stick and one with
Partners
the other.
in Time did it actually because it was the first Mario and Luigi game. Did it, and then with I believe Partners in Time, the first sequel to the Mario and Luigi, I think you were also controlling adult versions of Mario and Luigi, and then also the baby versions, all 4 at the same time. But I could totally see them doing like a full, just almost like a Donkey Kong-esque game around that concept. I almost wish they would do it now. That sounds awesome.
I think that's kind of an underused control scheme for a game, and it might just be because it's confusing for people, right? Because most people are so used to like, well, this is how I move and this is how I look around, that when you start trying to move and you realize you're moving like 2 characters and you have to either focus on one and get it where you need to go and then focus on the other one, or just break your brain a little bit so you can actually learn to control both of them at the same time. It's kind of I could see it being tricky for a lot of people, probably me included at the beginning, of just trying to rework my thinking process to control two characters actively at the same time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
No, I did think of a question though. This probably just mainly applies to Panda and Mike. Do you consider yourselves active collectors right now in any fashion? Like, do you still go out and look for stuff? Do you shop? Do you just basically just buy what is unexpectedly just put in your path by the universe?
So me, no. I think I'll return to it when the market I feel is in a fair place. Like right now, it's just so clearly getting, taken in the back and dirty things to you because it's so clearly off. I mean, as a quick example, right before the pandemic, I completed my Resident Evil GameCube collection, and I got them for dirt cheap, $15 here, $20 here. Those games now are like $200 to $300, and that's in the span of a year, right? Like that jumped in a year because I think horror games, in particular during the pandemic, were really taking off. That's why Silent Hill games now are really expensive.
I think those got popular to stream because people like to see people get scared in video games. They like to see their jump reactions, stuff like
whatever
that.
it is. Like my point is that
they got popular.
When when 1 year you're seeing them at $15 and then the next year $300, I'm waiting for it to get closer back down to earth, and then I'll totally start collecting again.
Do you think it's going to have a crash though?
No,
that's a tricky thing. I kind of think because it's going to be a game of chicken now. When this thing starts to come down, of like how much you're willing to come down, and I don't think we'll ever get. I don't think it's going to drop. It'll probably drop by 25% is, I think, realistic because it can't continue where it's at. It absolutely can't continue. And I'll tell you for a few reasons. The younger generation right now, with the economy in a terrible place as well, typically they're not making as much money, unfortunately. The economy is bad, and they have no nostalgia for a lot of this stuff. So really, it's really about kind of our group. And I don't think our group at this point is willing to be spending the amount of money it is, but also I don't think we're also willing to let go of our stuff for less money either. So I think it's going to be kind of gridlocked for a while. And I don't expect it coming down too much, unfortunately. I don't know. Mike, do you have any opinion on that?
I don't think it's coming down anytime soon. I think it's only going to get worse because you still have the you know what I like it is I've been thinking about this the whole show, and I'll tell you what I liken this to. Our parents used to tell us how, oh my gosh, had we knew then what we know now, we wouldn't have put all those baseball cards in the spokes of our bikes, right? That's what's happening now is people are figuring out that instead of collecting these things and reselling them and all that and getting WATA to praise them and putting grades on this stuff is not going away because it's not going to go away until people stop buying it, and I just don't see that right now. I see it getting worse. And I see it getting worse for the consoles that are harder to find things for. Right now, you can still get, we were just talking about Xbox games. Right now, you could still get that stuff. There's going to be zero market for, and this is what's going to make it worse for retro consoles, with the digital market the way it is now, and physical things becoming more and more scarce with Xbox, PlayStation, Switch, yada, yada, yada. There's going to be no collector's market there. So those people are going to want to collect something. They're going to keep going back to the older stuff. Jim! And they know that people want it, so they know they're going to get top dollar for it. I think this is going to continue to get worse.
Even if the economy tanks further?
Yeah, because you got to remember that this is an enthusiast market. And the enthusiast
I agree. I'm kind of playing devil's advocate.
Yeah, here's what will always survive a bad economy.
Because if people get in a bad spot and they have to sell their collection and these things come available again, they're going to go for a premium price. And people that are doing well during that kind of recession, people that have jobs that likely aren't going to be cut, are going to start snapping those things up. And they're not going to care about the price because they're still going to have the disposable income, right? So it's going to become like one of the, it's just going to become like feeding on that kind of cycle. I think the bigger question is the generation below us and below them even going to care? Because you got to remember the generations below us are mostly weaned on digital media from the start. Like even I have most of my music on my iPhone. I do more digital purchases for movies than I do physical purchases now. I have a ton of games on Steam.
That's another topic, dude. We're gonna have to talk about that because that's actual degradation of the film. But
well, I mean, there's a lot of different ways to kind of cut this, right? A lot of people have it for accessibility reasons, or just because they don't want to keep large physical collections, or they're just not as attached to physical media because it's not something that they grew up with, right? So I think this kind of collecting almost kind of dies a lot with our generation.
And like YouTube kids who grew up with AVGN, etc. Like there's just that hobbyist, that tiny, yeah.
So they're asking if you don't think there's going to be another video game crash, and we talked about this on, and we haven't talked about it here. We could probably do one on the crash on here, but my short synopsis of it is I don't think we'll have another crash like we did in the States in '83. And you got to remember that was a United States only thing. There wasn't a crash anywhere else. There was a crash in the States.
And that also depends on what the market turns into. If this turns into an all subscription model, for instance, that's a very different market than buying individual
and the
games.
Subscription model is another discussion too.
And I want to be on it.
Of subscription games and subscription media and stuff like that, like stuff that's on Netflix and stuff that's on Amazon Prime and all that. A lot of stuff isn't getting a physical release anywhere. So what happens when those servers go down? What happens to all this content that was created?
Good point, Nick.
A lot of this content is really good content. And it's the same way for a lot of the digital games that are released. A lot of these things don't get any kind of physical release. It's why I'm more comfortable on Steam than I am on the console stores, because Steam is, for the most part, going to be around. So if I want a digital copy of something, I'm more inclined to get it on PC, on Steam, because I have games from 10, 15 years ago that I can still play now. They still work. They find ways of continuing to make them work. Whereas, Nintendo dropped the Wii store. They dropping the Wii U store. Their PlayStation was trying to drop the PS3 store and all this stuff. So if you had it on your physical console, that's fine. But there's migrating it off to new drives, the integrity of your hard drive, and all this other stuff. What happens to that? What happens to that content? There's content that we can't get now because there's no physical copy of it.
And a good example, I don't think this is too off topic.
Yes, Jim, I'm calling you old. I'm calling me old.
Like one of the best examples of the shame of not being physical is PT. I don't know if everyone's familiar with that game. That was
absolutely. Yeah.
You're talking about a game here that is like actually a real big piece of gaming history. And that's a game that is just gone now, that people actually sell their PlayStations with the game on it for a huge price.
Yeah, those are worth like $1,000 because they had that game on there.
And it's just going to be gone, right? Like, and what a horrible shame to be losing this incredible historical thing that made such waves, and it's just going to be gone. But I guess that's I don't want to derail, but that's a good example of the shame of it not being something physical.
Well, I mean, it comes into this in a roundabout way because of, later generations not being as weaned on the physical, right?
Yes.
And you're seeing more and more content.
You'll own nothing and be happy, kind of.
Right. Like Game Pass is a prime example. I play a lot of stuff on Game Pass now. More so since I got my Series X, because it's convenient to sit on the sofa with the console and just boot something up and play it and try it. Will I buy the game?
I I feel like this is not a good topic to start at 12:22.
I know. We're not going to go into it too deep. This is a whole other topic,
fellas. Let's talk about the meaning of life.
This is a whole other topic that we can spin off and talk about.
Definitely want to, though.
The tricky nature of digital media. What do you do to preserve?
He's been doing it all night, Si.
That's a future show, quite frankly.
Well, Nick, when you talk about subscriptions, please have me on. I'm ready.
Hi, Si. Thanks for popping in.
Hey, Si. This will be a fun one.
Is it a giant SNES pad, or is Nick somehow really tiny? We'll let the chat.
You see little hands.
I have been playing. My wife has been trying to get me into playing Grounded lately, so it could be a little bit of both. So yeah, I don't want to dive too deep into that. That's another discussion to have, and that's definitely one I want to schedule with Panda when he can be on here, because I know he has some very strong opinions on it.
I'm ready.
I have some huge pros and a lot of cons to the whole thing, even though I use it a lot. I do more digital media now than I do physical media. But I'm not blind to the huge gaping chasm in front of me of problems, right?
And one of the biggest, and I swear this is not going to derail or anything like that, but one of my big fears of digital is that once it is all digital, how long will it be before the corporations basically make you sign those little agreements, which are ridiculous every time you buy a game, where at any time they can just turn that off? Like it's that PT situation of like, yeah, no, you don't own it. Like, no, you don't really actually own that. If you didn't,
and that's happened.
It happens all the time.
No, it's actually happened where people had it downloaded.
Yes,
like on Kindles and stuff, and they removed it.
Yes, that's happened. Yes, I think that.
So that's
there's
actually
a few
happened.
Xbox games I think that did that too.
Yeah.
I think.
I remember Capcom got in trouble for there was a game you could only play online, and then the servers went. I think when the PlayStation Network got hacked, and there was a bunch of games that were no longer playable because it wasn't live, and so that was like all. I think Capcom got sucked into that also because they were one of the ones that made games that were not available, even if you actually thought you owned it. It was basically just a coaster.
There are many games that are like that right now.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, most games you have to sign into the server to be authorized to be able to play the game or to be able to get some of the content. And before we go into that, though, there's Genovi's got another huge issue: data and disk rot.
Yeah,
he's been running into more and more of it, and that's a problem with CD media. Not huge now, but in moving forward, unless you can copy that over to a new disk or do some sort of preservation on it, you're going to have problems with that eventually.
Exactly, and Paste has the other most tragic example in the chat right now.
Is that tragic example that Nick sets it on fire? Because that's been a
that's always a risk. I mean, you can't get my channel. I set things on fire, sir.
The Konami Rebirth games.
I have to say, it's something that, knock on wood, I haven't had to deal with yet. But when it comes to...
All right, Pace, I tried.
If I could emulate more of my collection that I own, I would do so. So I emulate right now my Sega CDs, my 32X, and I emulate it because of exactly that. I don't want to keep popping them in and out of my drive. I don't want to put them in that position, and I don't want to go out and buy another Sega CD only to find out that the laser 6 months down the line is going to, malfunction on me, and then I've got a dead system.
Isn't it funny that we're starting to treat our consoles like car collectors treat their cars? Like, I don't want to drive this car more than a couple of miles because it devalues it, or I don't want to have this or that happen because you can't get the parts and this, that, and the other. It's the same scenario. It's the same thing that car collectors do. It's just a different medium.
Yeah. It's just it's a different medium where you don't get chicks when you're standing next to it.
Exactly.
Speak for yourself.
Stop talking about peeps. And Jose,
hey, lady, you see my Vectrix over here?
I
can't touch it, but
games have become
You can't
more of a
replace.
you buy it, they patch it, they add more to it, is more of a service kind of thing. There's been a lot of really good recent release games that I've been really happy that I played, but for every one of those, there's like 4 or 5
There's
ones
a
that
Tony
I feel
Hawk 5
that just aren't great. You know, it's
Yep.
I don't know. It's a mixed bag. There's a lot to love about modern gaming, and there's a lot to hate about modern gaming.
Everything now, whether you like it or not, is games as a service.
Pretty
Everything.
much. Even the physical ones you buy. Like going back to some of those physical media games, a buddy of mine bought Mortal Kombat 10. And I know I've told this story before. He put the disc in, it only had 2 characters. And I'm like, what? Because he bought the Ultimate Edition. It was supposed to have all like, I was almost 40 characters. I'm like, what's going on? 4 hours it took him to be able to finally be able to register with the server and unlock those characters.
That's hot garbage.
Is that not trash? That was a brand new copy of the game.
Yeah, none of the games I play are
everything
like that.
on the disc.
Yeah, no, that's no thanks. No thanks.
That was like the last. I when I bought my PS5, I bought the most recent Call of Duty that came out when it came out, thinking, okay, I'll play this online with some friends, because I had a group of friends at the time that wanted to play it, and I'm like, I'll get used to the controls on the campaign because I haven't played a Call of Duty game, and I think I played one on the 360 for like maybe 5 minutes. It was like the most Call of Duty I ever played.
Did you crush beer cans on your head too while you were playing it?
No. I wanted to break the disc. I wanted to break the disc because when I went to boot it up, there was one campaign mission.
Nice.
It took them a month to come out with the second campaign mission. I'm like,
cool.
What?
Yeah.
You don't even have the campaign here. I can't even download the campaign yet.
Well, at least it's better than like what Activision does when you have to kind of read the same amount of documentation that Mike is writing right now, where it's just 50,000 pages of a legal agreement for Crash Bandicoot. Like that you're signing away your genetic codes.
Yes.
And like that stuff is
and
ridiculous.
all your personal data and everything else like that.
And I don't even know how that's legal, because if it's not on the outside of the box, then if you have to open the box, tearing the box open, and then you're presented with, by the way, you can't play this unless you sign your life away. I don't even know how that's legal, but that's another conversation.
South Park did a great episode on this called
Human
Centipede
episode. Oh God.
Yeah,
oh, so bad.
Because
that was the Apple Store joke too, right? I think that was based on like an iTunes store or something.
Something like that with the EULA.
Yeah.
Well,
Kyle accepted the EULA.
Here's the thing. Here's part of the solution to this, and this is again probably another topic, and probably a reason for me to rewatch this episode so I can write down these topics is like the homebrew and a ROM hack situation, kind of always bringing us new games on these older consoles. So these older consoles are constantly having new games that don't come with all this goddamn baggage, right?
Language, Nick. Jeez.
I don't give a shit. It's my channel.
Whoa! My word. Goodness gracious!
This is not a kid-friendly channel.
Oh boy.
But constantly coming out with new titles for like all these older consoles.
I think that's great.
So if you're into those consoles, it's a great time, not only from an emulation standpoint and a collection standpoint, but a homebrew and a ROM hack standpoint, to be able to find not only all these old games that you may not have played, but get brand new games.
How awesome is that?
Those
and you get to open a new box for your old system. I think that's
you can literally
really
buy
cool.
a physical NES cart for your NES of a game that didn't exist in the original lineup. And pop it into your NES and play it. Same thing for like they do it for Genesis and Super Nintendo and all those. They even moved exactly, in television and all those. They even got the Cowabunga collection working on the Dreamcast.
It's probably driving some collectors a little nuts. So it's like, I finally completed the Nintendo set. I'm ready to retire and go to my old age home. What's this? 3 new games? God, gee, damn it. Like you have to now suddenly collect even more, and you just hope that they stop. You're now anti-wanting to play games because you need it to stop. So,
because you need your collection to finally be done.
Yeah, it needs to end, dude.
I want
no more fun. It's supposed to stop.
See, even Jaguar's getting a lot of homebrew games. There's all these,
and that's a console that needs it. Like that's
all these like people that have grown up with these, or people that fell in love with these, because you're seeing some younger generations are actually falling in love with the retro games. Either just like they just started gravitating to it because indie games started taking on that aesthetic, and then they started discovering them, or they were introduced. They're like, hey, well, if you like that, you should try this. Right. And then their older friends that are collecting retro and stuff like that introduce them to it. And so you've got a whole generation of like people like us and us late generation below. They're starting to just make these games. Right.
And I have a question for Mike and Matthews, actually, kind of about
later, Genovi. Thanks for popping in, man. Always a treat having you in chat, man.
For you guys as family men, have you found, if you don't mind discussing it, have you found that your kids, having grown up with you and this hobby, do they have any respect, or do they gravitate towards any of those older systems? Or is it really just all modern stuff? I'm just curious because they grew up with that in the household. Is there any respect? Is there any love? Is there, etc.? You know what I'm asking. I'm just curious.
Ouch.
I know, Shinobi, I feel for you, man. I know that feeling. Matthews, go ahead and answer first, because I definitely have an answer on this.
He's working on the thank you section of the novel.
My oldest son, I tried to. I was. It's gonna.
Is the answer that they're not allowed to touch your games?
This might actually make me sound bad, or might make me sound cool. I don't know. I wanted to control every aspect of his gaming experience. So before I allowed him to step into the new games, I didn't want him to. I think a 360 was probably the first console he was even around for. Before he was able to hold a 360 controller, I wanted him to play NES and Super Nintendo games. So these are the only games I allowed him to play, was Super Mario World and that kind of stuff. So
this
I think
probably a bad way for him to get into retro, but
I don't think. Well, he was 5 years old, didn't know any better. All he knew is that he was able to play with dad. So and also it was video games. So kids all like video games instinctively. So he does not gravitate now as almost an 18-year-old. Jesus Christ, he does not gravitate towards retro at all. But he does respect it, and he does talk about it fondly. He and I beating all these games together. So he is kind of nostalgic for those memories per se. My youngest son, I don't think he really recognizes the difference between a retro game and a new game. I think he's a terrorist also, so he's never not grounded enough to be able to play video games at all. But he watches me periodically when he can, and I think regardless of what game I put in, he would be down to play it. So I don't know if I'd really call that a respect for retro. I think it's just.
I can just see your kid growing up and flinching, like he wants to buy a new PS5, and he's like, "I'm not allowed. I gotta be Bubble Bobble first. I'm not allowed.
No, Daddy, no."
I was the same way with my kids about Star Wars too. I did not want them to see the new Star Wars. I didn't want them to know what a clone trooper was until they had seen what an Ewok was. Like so.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Well, and I feel like the line between new games and like our generation of games is getting kind of blurred, mostly because you have so many different art styles now. Like one of the biggest things last year, and I'm finding myself, I bought it on Steam and I'm playing through it again now. It's Vampire Survivors. I played the crap out of it on Game Pass, and I went out and bought it on Steam to support the developer and to play through it again on Steam. So I'm playing through that again. But I mean, that's like a 16-bit looking game that's a roguelike. You've got stuff like Shovel Knight and Gato Roboto, and all these stuff like Blasphemous and Infernix and all that all have like the kind of animation style that we wish we had gotten when we were doing 16-bit games, but now they're doing it and it looks gorgeous, right? Seeing all these 16-bit sprites move with this elaborate animation that doesn't hinder the gameplay in any way. Used to, you would cringe in an 8 and 16-bit game if it had that amount of animation, because you knew it was going to bite you in the ass when you were
trying to complete all those frames of animation before you let you do the next input.
Yes, and you knew it was going to hurt you, but it doesn't in the modern game because it's built around that experience, right? And so I feel like that aesthetic has just kind of like blurred the lines between like retro and modern gaming a little bit, right? It's not all like your Call of Duties and your Assassin's Creeds and stuff like that. Those have their place. Those are big, grandiose spectacles. But there's plenty of games that like the younger generation's playing and adoring that don't even have above like 16-bit to 32-bit graphics.
I think the bigger question is if they're getting off the phone. I think like it's the platform.
There's that problem too.
Yeah.
That's a whole other. That's a whole other problem. Yeah.
My kids, it's an interesting dichotomy between my three sons. The one who has begun to have a really nice respect for older games is Seth. Now, Seth started that with when he got his Switch, he was really big into Mario 64. And I mean really big into Mario 64. He could tell you all about the game from a technical aspect. I mean, he was that into it. I have to say that introducing him to I've got to word this kind of carefully. Not a secret. Piloting a console that's got some newer, some
he's really taken to that. He's really taken to that console.
Well, so he has. However, it's given me an opportunity to go back and show him, hey, this is what the original looked like. So I'm gonna take a game like Shark. So there's enough video out there that everybody knows what the Intellivision Amico Shark looks like. But I was able to take the original and show him this is where it came from. And I've watched him begin to play those older games, to look at those. So the next thing that I started to show him was the Atari 50th collection. And I wanted him to see, so I was showing him like Miner 2049er, because I'm like, I wanted to show him, this is a game that I played when I was your age on a computer. You're playing Hello Neighbor and you're playing Roblox and all that stuff on your computer. When I had an Atari 800 computer, this is what it looked like, and these are the kind of games that I played on it. And so he's beginning to see that. And he's always been into games of all styles. And my other two kids, even my oldest isn't into video games as much. He's into phone stuff, but he's not a console gamer. The last console game he actually played was Assassin's Creed Odyssey. Was the last one he played. He doesn't sit down and console game. I take that back. He's played Shark. But he doesn't, by nature, play console games. So he's not really into it. Like Rob, my youngest, my 8-year-old, he doesn't know any better.
Yeah, mine's 8 also. So
the other one Seth really likes. He likes the original Astro Smash. So I mean, those are things that he's begun to get into.
I kind of wish that if I had a kid that I just, as an experiment, like gave him all the worst gaming history. Like I would be like, back in the day we played the Power Pad and it was the greatest thing. Like, and I just raised that kid on all the worst gaming parts of history. The Power Glove, like you got to get really good at the Power Glove before you can graduate to your PS5.
You guys are mean.
I'll buy you a PlayStation 5 if you can beat the original TMNT on the internet.
Right.
With no hacks.
Buy you a PlayStation. Right. If you could beat the original Ninja Gaiden.
Yeah.
I'll buy you a car.
that's hard.
I want crappy games. like Bubsy and
Or,
like
Mr.
Bubsy 3D.
Hyde.
This was the pinnacle of gaming. Bubsy 3D.
Bubsy.
Yeah, that's what I was on.
Terrible people.
And my kid would eventually just hate me.
Right.
He'd be like,
My
Battle War.
favorite game of all time was Web of Fire.
Yeah, so good.
So good.
Color and Dinosaur was the
Waldo
pinnacle
here's
of
got
gaming.
an interesting idea, like a game console with circuit parts that you can snap on and off that are more kid friendly. I feel like that would get expensive kind of quick. I mean, it would be neat as far as like a custom design or a DIY kind of learning experience for consoles to kind of experiment with something like that. I feel like things would still be outsourced because you'd still be getting those parts. It'd be like building Labo kits, just plastic snap-on parts for stuff. It would be easy to like replace parts and stuff like that for sure, but you'd still have a main board you'd have to plug everything into, and that could be a struggle. But we have been going on for over 2 hours.
I know.
Half our crowd is starting to go to bed, including Waves.
I know.
So I think we should probably do a wrap up here and get out of here. I'm not going to be able to stay too much tonight because I'm going to want to get something to drink and chill with my wife for a little bit before we completely call it a night. And I just saw Ross
We should
probably wrap it up, and we really should.
Yes.
So
that would be hilarious.
So, any last comments from you guys on the panel as far as like the topic we had tonight before we kind of move forward?
I think I've said all.
Not really. We didn't really discuss in this is not a complaint. We didn't really discuss collection woes so much as just collection stuff. Like I think for the most part, what I've gotten out of this conversation is that people are generally still positive, maybe not optimistic really, but at least haven't soured on collecting.
I would love to collect if I could afford it. That's
I think my woes are more from a personal aspect, being able to allocate the space. Right.
Well, you didn't bring that up when we were talking about the
I did bring
he
that
did.
up.
Yes, he did.
Talked about
he did.
that.
No, I did. I'm soured based on the price. Like, if it does not come down to me, I think not only like it kills the joy of this hobby. It has now become, it's just this, how much can we squeeze and extract from you? And it's taken the fun and joy out of the history of game, which is what I primarily love. And the joy of that, of the hobby and the search and all those other things. Like when you're a loser like me and you really don't have a lot going on in your life, it's fun tracking down that last Wii U game. Like that stuff is fun. But when you're just going to go there and it's just a robbery, and they just look at your wallet first, and it's not that fun of going to the game store and making friends and things like that. To me, it has soured it. It's not necessarily the fault of the market necessarily. It's more of what happened around it. But I'm seeing no trajectory where it's coming back down to its roots. It's retro roots, if you will. Thank you.
We'll see. My take is
He'll
different.
be here all week.
And that's, I kind of thought that this would actually end up being more of an argument than it has been, but I have not soured on collecting. I acknowledge that it's a whole lot harder than it used to be, and that's unfortunate. I'm happy with what I've collected so far. I think I have an excellent library of games. I could never buy another game from here on out, and I would still have plenty to do and plenty to love. And on the shelves that I've already stocked.
I agree with that.
So and yes, it is difficult to go out, and you can't just go out to Goodwill anymore and just come home with an armload of games. But what that has done is that it just makes those moments when you do find something rare and expensive, and even if it's not rare and expensive, when you do go find a boxed Ninja Turtles game on the NES, not an expensive game, but it's unexpected. This was a very nice surprise.
But so Rob, you don't think that price though? You don't think that the price that you're going to find it now, let's say what you would in this marketplace call cheap, is still $20 to $30 way beyond what it should be though.
I brought this game out just to show it.
Okay.
I paid $5 for this at a garage sale just a couple months ago.
Okay. Okay.
These kind of games are out there. So it's when you find stuff like this, you realize that it's not done. It just you could still.
You found that for $5?
Yes, I did. Well, my wife did. But
did you play the game? I wouldn't be surprised if there's like a porn VCD in there.
Yeah.
It's got both the discs. They look really good. Yeah.
Wait a minute. So when did you find that? When did you buy that?
I posted on Instagram. Yeah, I don't think we follow each other on Instagram.
I'm not.
I want to say
I'm old.
I could give you the exact date.
All right. It wasn't recently.
It was recently.
Really?
You said a few months ago, right?
Yeah.
Dude, that guy
at an estate sale. So I'm not going to.
So there you go.
I'm not going to retail stores. Why are you going to retail expecting to get a great deal? That's what I'm talking about, though. It's like I've never stopped. I would always go hunting for at the thrift shops and the garage sales and the flea markets and stuff. These are still viable options. It never would have crossed my mind to go get a deal, or at least
thrift shops no longer though.
I don't know about that either. So
I've had trouble at thrift shops. Thrift shops have gotten wise to this.
They've gotten stupid about it. You're right, and more often than not, Goodwill will just send all their video games off to their online store, and you can buy it on their eBay, whatever. Not all of them, though. So a lot of stuff does, maybe not a lot, but some stuff does slip through the cracks, and that's the kind of stuff that's available. That's what you and the resellers are now fighting for. So it has added a few more layers between you and those finds, but they're there. You can find them if you're persistent. I still like looking, so it's people are yes, it was an estate sale, so
yeah.
And I was going to say too, I'm too honest. On many occasions I've been somewhere where I said you're underselling this. Like you should be way higher than
dude.
This.
You.
But I don't like stealing from the dead, like Matthew.
Yeah, I mean, you literally got that for $130 less than what.
Yeah, so it was my wife, and she was at this estate sale. She was going
blaming it on the wife.
Hey, just let me
such a Matthews thing to do.
Yeah, I sure realized. She was going through a box of music CDs, and she sees this, and she's like, "I think this is a video game. I'm going to buy it for Robert." And so she doesn't call me Robert, but she bought it for me. She's like, "I got this today." She didn't know what it was, other than it was a Sega makes video games, right? So that's how she saw it. So, but honestly, if someone is handing to me Skies of Arcadia or Power Slave or Misadventure of the Trombone, if I say, "Hey, how much do you want for this?" and they say $10, okay, that's the price you want for it. I'm not obligated, and I do not feel morally tormented at all, or torn, or what have you, to let you know you should be charging me at least.
Well, I imagine it's the same rush you get when you steal purses from old ladies, right?
You're gonna hate my next video, by the way. So.
I'm kidding.
You might as well just not even just leave your thumbs down and preemptively.
Well, you can set up a phone bank to contact the vulnerable elderly to see if they have access to games.
This is one of the rare occasions where JT Smash and I are in agreement.
And I think your wife is just greasing you for a PS5. I think she just got that for you, so she could smooth talk into buying a PS5. That's what I think.
I am totally on board with you there, Rob. If somebody, I'm telling you, if somebody came to me with Power Slave and said, I don't know, I'll give you 20, give me $20 for it, I would do that, and then I would get in my car, and you would see me actually go back in time, because I would hit 88 miles an hour as fast as you can.
Flame trail
like a baby that night.
With that game, it would be like this. I would be holding.
Go home, look yourself in the mirror, you sly devil, you.
You'd have alone time with yourself, just thinking of that moment when you got that deal.
Go home and twirl my mustache.
Get away from me, wife. I've got my own vision.
Oh, this got so creepy so fast. So moving on.
You're ruining it for me, wife. Just give me a second here. I gotta. That time I got Power Slave, whatever the hell it's called, for $5.
So we've already gotten kind of Rob's last thoughts. We kind of gotten back. Mike, I think we covered your last thoughts on the whole thing.
I
too,
think
right?
so.
Okay. Now going by Panda Sub 2000, what are your last thoughts for the evening?
Or
did we already cover that? Sorry, I think we.
I don't know. Is this where we're doing plugs, or is this where we're?
Well, I mean, you could do that too, but we're mostly just trying to do a wrap up so we can get everybody.
Oh, a wrap up. Oh well,
yeah.
I think Rob said it best. I think there is still those great finds. I think there are those great finds out there.
Often agrees when you call him right.
Yeah, I would say for me. So I think that's 100% right. For me, what I miss most is that the hobby, like the cigar shop version of this, where you can go to a store, talk with friends, where you're hearing, I never heard of that game, and you're talking about old stuff, and you find new things that you never played before, and you're giving suggestions. Like, I miss that, going to the old stores, the old game stores, and doing that. But absolutely, you can go out there. You still can find it if you like the solo hunt. That's very much still out there, and probably even more fun because it's such a hard thing. It's really, really hard to hunt those things and to find them. I just always say, stay off eBay though, because it's way more fun trying to.
Yeah. You can get a whole collection tomorrow if you.
Yeah. Agreed.
Want to drop a bunch on eBay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I agree with you. I do think that's taking some of the fun out. The hunt is what really got me. That's why I didn't get my feelings hurt when the prices went high. They became harder to find. The hunt was still there.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I think from my standpoint, I do most of my shopping online these days. I don't really go to stores to hunt for things, and that's primarily because most of the stores around here don't really carry anything. I mean, as far as retro games, yeah, maybe. But like if I'm doing like toy hunting is another example, right? Like I could go to like 5, 6, 7 Targets looking for the lines that they exclusively carry, and none of them will have it. It's all on their online store for pre-order, and that's where you can find it. The store shelves have the same 2 figures that they've had for like the last 9 months. They're not stocking anything new. They're not really putting any effort to keeping any stock on it. So the thrill of trying to hunt that stuff really isn't there. Maybe if you're looking for like older figures and stuff like that, and you're going for that more nostalgic thing, and you know some stores around, you can go and you can find those. But most of the ones around here, when I've gotten in there, I mean, even for like an old Rocksteady Bebop, those were almost $30 a piece. That's pretty expensive for a figure that you maybe paid $5 for back in the day. And I would imagine the retro game scene would be the same way. You'd have to hunt on, Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace and pray you found somebody who had something that they didn't know what they had, or find an estate sale or something like that. And I just don't want to put the effort and time to driving around to all these places hoping I'm going to find like this one game. I want a more convenient, accessible way to be able to build a collection, particularly as someone like me who would be starting it from scratch. I don't want to go to estate sale after estate sale after estate sale, looking and hoping I'm going to find something that's in the vein of what I want to collect. Right now, I spent a whole day driving around, going to estate sales, and driving is not my thing in the first place. So I'm not having fun driving. I'm not having fun at the estate sale because I'm not really finding anything I want in my collection. And then I come home annoyed. Or maybe I do find the one game, but I found one game to start my collection with for a whole day's work. That's just exhausting for anybody coming in, I feel like. As somebody who's been collecting for a while, I can see the excitement and appeal for that because you've already got a base of a collection. You're looking to fill gaps in that collection. And so when you find that really good deal on that one game, that's a great feeling. But for somebody like me, like online would be the way to go, to buy some of these things in bulk and hope you get a few good pieces here and there, because you don't have any of those, right? It's all new, or all ones that you had. Now you maybe have them again, that kind of thing. So
I just think it's kind of like, and I don't particularly like hunting, but to me, it's kind of like if you got, those hideous, animal head things you put on the wall, like it's way more fun, I imagine, if you like hunting, that you can point to. Oh, there's that fox, and that's the fox I shot with. Da 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 da. Instead of just buying other people's accomplishments and then putting them on the wall, of just having a weird animal head collection.
Right.
This is a weird thing I'm going down with, but anyway, like there's something to be said. Like there's a story behind each of those things that I happen to love. Not so much the fox head thing.
Yeah, and I was gonna totally agree. I could tell you the story of every single game I bought.
Right. Yep. Mm-hmm.
So
Rob will be on the next season of Storage Wars.
Let's very, very quickly go around what people are doing on their channel because it's basically like 1 a.m. on some time. Anna, what you got going on?
So I just released. Everything is in that one video. I just released a channel update video. It's really quick and it kind of tells you what I'm doing. Long and short of it, I'm focusing this year on delivering 3 to 5 very big videos. That's the goal. I'm not looking to make monthly or weekly content, things like that. It's going to be released when they can release. But I'm hoping to make each one of these episodes something that you can hopefully really enjoy, get some popcorn with most of these episodes with the family and have a good time. I want to make kind of event type videos. That's what I want to be focusing on this year. So Panda Sub 2000, if you go there and you can see that little update video, it kind of gives you a taste of what's to come. Thank you so much for having me, Nick. This was a lot of fun.
And his link is in the description, guys. So definitely check out his channel. Mike, what you got going on?
I got an NLG show tomorrow night. So we got our retro fix in here. Tomorrow night we'll be doing some modern game talk. There's a lot going on, and unfortunately we can't escape the whole FTC Microsoft Activision thing, and that's starting to get a little
still talking about that.
It's starting to get a little ugly now. So
with the 5 people that filed the class action lawsuit?
No, it's the FTC has decided they're not backing down. So there's that, and Microsoft might be putting together a show to finally frickin' tell us when some of their frickin' games are coming out. So we'll talk about that a little bit too.
Okay.
So,
Rob, what you got?
Just wrapping up a video, which will hopefully come out before too long. Not connected to what we were talking about here on the show. And that's it.
All right. I'm going to try to do a stream tomorrow night. I'm going to try to push on the events and maybe wrap that up. It may or may not finish tomorrow. It's only got like 2 stages left, but it depends on how it's broke up and how long it takes.
And I enjoyed your adventure episode, by the way.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. That dropped today on the Geek Story channel.
That was really nice.
Talking about the origins of adventure games. I will have one on the Game Boy camera coming out on Wednesday. And then I have the start on another video for next week. I think I'm going to talk about the origins of the Battle Royale game type. Because that's kind of a slightly interesting story that I thought of, a more recent game type that's hit big in the last couple of years, but it actually goes back a little bit further than you think, and has a little bit more interesting origin even in its current iteration than I think what a lot of people are aware of. So that should be a fun one. I got the voice recorded on that today, so I should be able to work on that this week and maybe get another oddity out there, and then hopefully be able to work on some longer format stuff. I've got 1 or 2 ideas floating around, one of which is in mid-flight as far as writing it, and a couple other that I just kind of have in the back of my head that I kind of want to start fleshing out a little bit more. So that's kind of what's coming up on my channel. I'm hoping this year to maybe start getting some more stuff on Geeks with Cash as I have time. I would like to have, I'm hoping soon to have a better area to be able to film some toys and collectibles and things like that. So maybe that can start coming back up on the channel, because that's always been a struggle with that. Is not that I've stopped collecting. It's just that I don't have a good space to film some of it because it's just too big, or it's just awkward, or it's just an annoying location.
Can I ask you a quick question about your toy collection real fast, really fast?
Yeah, go ahead. Go.
Like when you watched the film Toy Story, did you go like, those toys have it all wrong? You know how like the idea behind Toy Story was like toys are meant to be played with and not put on shelves? Were you like the whole time like, those toys are the villains of this story?
I honestly, I mess
was the best story.
Yeah. Honestly mess with mine a little bit. Most of mine are out of the
okay.
box and they're on the shelf. Some of them I transform semi-frequently, some of them I don't. Some
Dude,
are so
never twist a transformer, dude. It'll break. I have experience.
well, I have broken one trying to transform, but before it was some of the ones I buy are kind of difficult to transform, and they have some fairly delicate parts. So if you're not exceptionally careful, and sometimes if you are exceptionally careful, you can still break them. So some of them I transform because they're a little bit more user friendly, and others I don't transform much for fear of doing exactly that, breaking it unintentionally. And that just comes down to how they're constructed. Some of them are you need like a freaking PhD to design the thing, much less transform it. It's crazy. So, but anyway, that's kind of what's going on and kind of where my angle is this year. That's about all I got. Jan, I would love to answer your question. We kind of talked about that a little bit. So you might want to kind of scan back and kind of watch that because we did kind of touch on that a couple times.
Yeah, especially with AVGN and stuff. You'll go to like game conventions and you'll see some of that niche younger group kind of going in there.
Yeah,
that exists.
Yeah, so it's not totally lost on them. It's just not as big of a thing. But I think we're going to call it a night, guys. We've got a bunch of people here that are tired that would like to go to bed, and some of us that are going to try to spend a little bit, at least 5 minutes with our wives before we go to bed.
That battle axe, I better get to her.
All insane.
So, as always, thank you guys for showing up and hanging out with us tonight. We deeply
this
appreciate
is fun.
it. Thank you very much, Panda, for coming on. And we
Thank
always
you.
have a long show when you're on, but it's always some of our more interesting shows when you're on. So it's always a pleasure to have you. So you always have an open invitation anytime you like. You know that. Just got to let me know if it's a week you're interested in, or if there's a certain topic you want to talk about. Let me know, and we'll work it in. I'm totally game with that. So
thank you, sir.
Like some of the ones we talked tonight that you want to be in on, you let me know a night when you can be on.
I'm ready.
That fits within our rotation, and we'll do it. That's what we'll do that week. So
I might have to be off that night.
The bells toll for thee.
You're again to talk about the concerns of some of this stuff, and you guys are like, whatever. So now you're in my arena, son.
And I'm ready. I'll be your Robin. I'm your Robin. You're totally flamboyant Robin, Batman.
Yep. Like a Batman symbol that comes up randomly. We just do you're in the show now.
It's a Game Pass symbol.
Then immediately gets shotgunned by Elmer Fudd or something. All right, guys. Have a great night. Thank you so much again.
Yeah, good night, Play On Gamers.
Good night, everyone.